this is Editing KJ with a quick note that this episode was recorded before the WGA strike and the SAG-AFTRA strikes were resolved, and in some cases possibly before the strikes began. We're super happy to be back, so please enjoy this episode.
I love how everything else going on in this podcast, and that's what they choose to get mad about.
Absolutely too much happening in the political landscape of 2020 to explain before we've even had breakfast.
My name is KJ, and you're listening to the Supernatural Opinions podcast, where some things in this world are supernatural. My pronouns are she, they, and this is the podcast where I talk to my fellow Supernatural fans about Supernatural, and we share our supernatural opinions.
This week, we're going to be talking about Bridgewater Season 2. A reminder that discussion episodes are open to all seasons and episodes, and this may contain spoilers, including and beyond Season 3, Episode 16, and we will be discussing all of Season 2 of Bridgewater. So if you haven't caught up on that yet, we're going to be spoiling the entire season. So maybe you can do it in about 12 hours. I know, because I just did it. I slept last night, and I did the whole season in, I would say, about 15 hours with the sleep in there, so it can be done. It's not a lot. Just put this down, come back to it.
It will be worth it, honestly.
It will be worth it. It's a really great series. It was really great to binge it, honestly, because I had only listened to this season once, like as it was coming out, so it was really nice to listen to it all together as like a very cohesive story.
It was a little traumatizing to listen to it all together, honestly.
I agree. So I'm being joined today, obviously, by Meredith. Meredith, it's a brand new season, so remind everyone who you are.
Great. My name is Meredith. My pronouns are she, her, and I don't have any notes today, but I'm making up for it with enthusiasm.
Yes, I would say that this is generally an area that I would consider Meredith pretty knowledgeable on, so I don't think notes are actually required. I think you can just do this.
I've listened to the podcast, right? That's all you need.
And Francis, you are a repeat guest. You're one of our very first guests that we had, but please remind everyone who you are, because it is also a new season.
Well, hi, welcome to the new season. I'm excited to be here. My name is Francis. I go by she, her, and, Bridgewater was a roller coaster of a ride. The second season was very different from the first season in some ways, and I'm excited to divulge into it.
For me, I think the thing I did not do for myself this season was I didn't do enough predictions as the season was going. I do not have screenshots of me being like, this is how the season ends. I do think, like last season, I think we all kind of saw where this season was going.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I don't have screenshots of me being like, this is how the season's going to end, like 2 episodes before the end.
I had so many theories, like, while I was listening to it, but, like, I listened to it in such a short time period, and I was busy the whole time, and I didn't end up talking to anyone about my theories.
But yeah, I thought I'd just take us through the events of each episode, kind of as they go, a little timeline, and we're going to start off with our timeline of Season 1, which ended on day 15, which was a Tuesday, in mid to late September of 2020.
Those damn Tuesdays.
Yeah, and Jeremy's father, Thomas Bradshaw, had just appeared in the woods after Celeste sacrificed herself and revealed that the children of Tituba had shoved him through an interdimensional doorway 40 years earlier. I have to say, I had forgotten a lot of where we left off, even though I did accurately predict it last season. By the time this season came out, it had been a while, and I was like, what's happening?
Yeah, I listened to Season 1 again, like, before getting into Season 2, and I had the same issue. Like, so much of it was, like, familiar, and I knew where it was going, but, like, so many other parts of it were like, wow, this is new information.
Yeah, there were definitely some characters that I had not remembered, like Katie Franks and Officer Batista.
Right? It's so weird, but Katie was such a big part of it, and I just totally forgot about her.
Yeah, I didn't re-listen to Season 1. What I did do is I re-listened to our podcast episode of Season 1, and that was what I used to remind me. I was like, that's under an hour and a half. That's a little easier than the 10 episodes of Season 1.
That's fair.
But Jeremy has also just learned 2 nights earlier that Thomas and Anne were together, and that Thomas was the father of Anne's daughter, Shelley Hoskins, and that they were going to raise Shelley and Jeremy together before Thomas went missing. And then another little thing that happened between seasons is that they recast Thomas Bradshaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, voiced in season 1 by Nathan Fillion. Thomas was voiced this season by Alan Tudyk. I honestly would not have previously thought of these two people as sounding much alike, but I honestly didn't even notice at first that they had recast. I think that they did a great job at blending these two performances.
Also, Alan Tudyk has like a lot of experience in voice acting, and he can do a lot of different voices.
A lot. I was looking at his IMDb page.
Yeah.
I was a little sad to see famous Canadian Nathan Fillion cut, but I'm sure he just like wasn't busy. Thomas was a much bigger role this season than it was last season, and I'm sure he just could not fit that into his schedule. I am almost 100% certain that was the process.
Oh yeah, but if you're gonna replace him, I am not mad that we got Alan Tudyk.
No,
I like him.
Alan Tudyk's performance was really great this season.
Yeah, and like I've seen him and heard him in a lot of other things, and he's awesome.
Yeah, he's done a lot of stuff. I was very impressed by his resume. So that brings us to episode 11, the in-between. And Jeremy and Anne bring Thomas home to Anne's. He is not aged, so he still appears to be like 35-ish, which is like 5-ish years younger than Jeremy is currently. Jeremy's like 37. Or
really? I
47.
thought he was in his 40s.
Jeremy's 47-ish.
47? I thought he was like, okay, never mind. This is gonna go on for a while.
It's been 40 years since Thomas went missing, and Jeremy was 7 when Thomas went missing, so he should be 47.
He was 7? Why did I miss that?
What?
I just listened to the whole series.
Why did I think he was like 4 or 5 when Dad went missing?
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I want to say he was 7. Maybe I'm wrong, honestly. Maybe I made that number up, but I want to say he was 7.
No, I mean,
I
7
trust
is
you.
a mythologically significant number.
I'm sure
so
if it's brought up in the
Yeah.
notes, I'll have it down to exact days. They're looking for Celeste, but they don't find her. But they do hear something large and growly and dangerous, and they're like, we should leave. And then we go to, it's like day 16, which is Wednesday. The days are going to be wrong by the end of this timeline, just a heads up. Olivia and Vipin are still investigating the disappearance and reappearance of Olivia's brother Ethan, who I also had forgotten had gone today on my first listen. Ethan went missing. I forgot Ethan existed.
Which is very interesting because that part where they found him by the lake in season 1 creeped me out so much the first time.
It's also in Showtime only been like a couple of days.
Yeah, I was thinking about how short the timeline is just now, and like how that makes all of Jeremy's behavior in the last episode makes so much sense.
Yeah, that was Sunday/Monday, and this is Wednesday morning. So
I am so surprised that he held it together as well as he did.
yeah, they're looking into that, and Ethan's been released from the hospital. Olivia and Ethan's father is going to take Ethan to Winchester, Massachusetts, to visit his paternal grandparents, which is like an hour away from Bridgewater. Obviously, I feel like Winchester was a choice. I feel like there are a few very specific supernatural references in this season. I feel like that was one of them.
I have a couple in my notes as we go.
Incredible. I love it. Vivian asked Olivia if she remembers Katie Franks, and in case, like us, you forgot who Katie Franks is or why we care that Vivian's bringing her up in this conversation. Jeremy and Vivian were last seen together when Katie Franks arrived at the university and told them that Celeste needed help in the woods, and then Vivian never saw Anne or Jeremy again. And it's now been like a night. It's now morning. That was last night. So that's why we're concerned about Katie and why Vipin is concerned about Anne and Jeremy.
And what a night it was.
Yeah. We just confirmed that Anne's in her 70s and Thomas is in his 30s, and they're very much still in love with each other, even though they've only been reunited for like 20 minutes.
Good for them.
It's actually so sad. Their whole relationship is really upsetting for everybody.
A lot of things about this show that are upsetting.
Yeah. Jeremy has a well-deserved meltdown as Thomas basically like reconfirms everything that Celeste told us at the end of the previous season about how Thomas came across the call and intervened and got trapped in the liminal space. And Jeremy is like, you missed my entire life and I feel like I need to yell at you about it. Anne wants to hide Thomas from the authorities while they figure out what's going on, but they do decide that Jeremy should call and report Celeste missing. And Thomas is like, if Celeste didn't get through the other side alive, then they're gonna have big problems. And soon we're gonna find Celeste didn't get through alive and we got big problems. Vipin and Olivia decide that they're just gonna go out into the woods because, everyone else has gone out in the woods and not been reachable since. So, everyone else should just follow. That can't go wrong at all.
Yeah, I wonder what they were imagining would happen.
It's like that one episode of Grey's Anatomy where Derek Shepherd is a depressed monster, and every time they send someone out to find him, he just keeps whoever they sent and makes them as depressed as him.
Or, in a different vein, like that episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine where Rosa didn't want to get married and she got everyone drunk.
Yes, exactly. The point is, if people keep not coming back, don't send more people. You're just losing them. And that almost turned out to be Extra Trooper Vipin and Olivia. They come across the police and Celeste's body, but there's no sign of Anne or Jeremy or anybody else. So they're like, well, if they were here and Celeste was here, the most likely thing that Anne would have done from now is go home. And there's not really great reception at the house, so maybe they're just at home.
I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but you had one job, Celeste.
Also, Anne has a landline that she's just not picking up.
She's busy.
It's fine. But they decided to just start walking in that direction. Thomas says he wasn't really anywhere. He was in like an in-between place and he's just not entirely sure what's on the other side, but time was different there. And Anne and Jeremy are just like, holy shit, everything's fucking real and this is all really happening. And Thomas is back. And then Thomas is like, actually, I wasn't by myself there. And then Vipin and Olivia get attacked by a monster and the first episode ends. Because, all of these episodes do end on a cliffhanger. Every single one of them.
Even the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because why not?
It's a great tradition. Let's stick to it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I actually think that this is Wednesday into like Thursday morning that all of this is happening. So I do think it's like possibly Thursday morning now. But Vip and Olivia are being chased through the woods by the monster. And Olivia fights off the monster like the badass she is. She absolutely takes after Anne.
Oh, yes. I love that. I was so impressed with her.
I'm very impressed with the physical condition that Anne has maintained into her 70s in this season. Anne is really just incredible. I have a hard time of thinking of Anne as in her 70s because I love Melissa Ponzia, who voices Anne, and I know what she looks like. And it's not 70.
Yeah, it's not 70s.
I really feel like Anne would get along with my landlady because they're both in their 70s, and my landlady does like all her own renovations by herself.
That is the vibe Anne gives. Anne absolutely is never calling anyone to do any work on her home. She lives alone. She does all her shit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my landlady's gonna outlive me.
Jeremy's waking up from a nightmare about when he went missing in the woods and the time that Thomas went missing. Thomas says that Jeremy changed a lot after he went missing. He became really interested in books and fairy tales after being more of an outdoorsy kid, and they bond over the fact that they like the same pierogies, which is very valid, but also Anne's pierogi order is straight up trash, so it's not hard. Jeremy and Thomas are right. Whatever jam-filled pierogies Anne is having, that is just not a thing here at all.
That's so weird.
I've never heard of that before. That's not a thing up here at all. So,
Anne, I had so much respect to you up until this moment.
Yeah, I have some judgment. I'm all about mixing savory and sweet, but just straight up a jam-filled pierogi does not sound appealing to me, or fit with my idea of what a pierogi is at all.
No.
I'd love to have some Polish people weigh in on what the appropriate pierogi fillings actually are. Thomas asked about Jeremy's mom for the very first time, and Jeremy's pretty happy to report that she lives in California and she's remarried. And Jeremy does have some questions about the relationship timeline between Anne and Thomas. Which we do get an answer about it, and it's not good. Yeah, Jeremy then throws a major wrench into our timeline because Jeremy says that Joe Biden is currently president-elect, which makes this late 2020, but it does imply a lot more time past season 1 than I had budgeted for, because season 1 started in early September of 2020, which means this has to be at least mid to late November of 2020. But I've only accounted for enough days for it to be mid to late September, so some timeline fuckery is occurring.
Misha had good intentions, but
yeah. Also, this, not to get too meta with this, but there was a lot of flack about this conversation. There was some discourse online. Some conservatives really lost their shit, and Aaron Maggie went on the record, took to Twitter to defend his decisions, and he said that he did not say anything one way or another about President Trump. All he said was that there wasn't time to explain it to Thomas right now. And you know what? That is fair, because Thomas doesn't know who Donald Trump is at all. This is pre everything that Donald Trump's pretty much ever done, 1980. So, it's a lot to do. And then what's the time to explain all of that?
I love how everything else going on in this podcast, and that's what they choose to get mad mad about.
Absolutely too much happening in the political landscape of 2020 to explain before we've even had breakfast. Anne returns with breakfast before anyone can be too upset about the upended family situation that they're living in. And Vipin and Olivia are both injured and a little lost, but they're both like, wow, you really survived that situation. And it's less than a week since Vipin's last getting lost and injured in the woods incident, but they do end up back in Olivia's car, which is good. And Thomas tells us a little bit more about Alden, who was a 7-year-old boy who was in the in-between, who also didn't age the whole time that Thomas was there. And Alden went missing in 1940, Thomas in 1980, it's now 2020. So we're presumably on like a 20-ish year cycle of this whole like liminal space, people going missing in between thing.
Has anyone else ever read Narnia?
I haven't read Narnia, but I am like aware of Narnia.
All right, so in The Magician's Nephew, I think.
Oh, I've read that one. It's the only one I've read.
You remember like the forest between the worlds with all the pools and portals in it?
Yeah.
I was thinking of that the entire time.
Yeah, that is kind of the vibe.
It's not... Yeah, because it's not its own world, but it has doorways to other worlds.
I will say, one of my very favorite Aaron Mahnke bits that he's ever done is on this other podcast I listen to, Hello from the Magic Tavern, which is not for children. I will just say that right now. It is an E-podcast. And there's way too many jokes about dicks, butts, and farts, because it is a bunch of dudes doing, like, fantasy improv. But they did a live show, and Aaron Mahnke did a bit at the beginning, like he was doing an episode of lore about this podcast, Hello from the Magic Tavern, and it's so good. I very much recommend. I want to say it's episode 80 of Hello from the Magic Tavern. It's like the first like 5 minutes. Hang on, I'm just gonna do a quick check so that I don't have to edit this later.
You might have to edit out the part where you're looking for it.
Yes, I absolutely will. But that's easier. That's an easier edit.
That's fair.
It was a hot minute ago. It was like back in 2016. I think it's episode 87 or 70. I think it's episode 87. Anyway, it's very good. It's very funny. It's very funny if you listen to Hello from the Magic Tavern, because Aaron Mahnke does this whole, like, you know, he does the lore narration voice, and this, like, you know, this little thing he does where he, like, tells a story about, like, some, like, anecdotal story, and then, like, that brings him to his point. Well, this whole little anecdotal story is about liminal spaces, and Hello from the Magic Tavern is about a guy who slipped through a magical portal in the drive-thru of a Burger King in Chicago and ended up in a magical realm. It's quite a good podcast, as long as you don't mind a little bit of rude humor, because yeah, it is 3 men doing improv, fantasy improv.
That does sound fun.
It's quite good. Anyway, back to this podcast. Back to this podcast about a podcast.
Where we're talking about a different podcast entirely.
Yeah, exactly. Thomas really wants to get Alden out, but Jeremy is really focused on the potential impacts of Thomas's health, and he's concerned that Thomas might suddenly age, or worse, like, just not be compatible with living here. And you know what? That turns out to be a very valid fear. I just got a message from my former landlord asking about if anyone drives a BMW in my unit. I don't live there anymore.
So who in your unit would drive a BMW?
Nobody. Literally no one. They rent to students, like almost exclusively students. Trust me, no one who's living there is driving a BMW.
Wow, okay. Anyway, Bridgewater.
Back to Thomas and his like precarious life situation. They decided that like they have time to catch up on the last 40 years and they can discover the mysteries of the Bridgewater Triangle on a different day, but like right now they should just eat breakfast.
Fair, yeah.
So we go back to Olivia and Vipin. Olivia has a little like sad moment where she's like really sad that she wasn't as close with Anne as she could have been, because she like didn't believe Anne, and like it turns out like no one believed Anne, including her family, and like that's why like Shelley and Olivia have been so distant with Anne, and she's like a little bit sad that their relationship isn't as great as it was. And Olivia describes the dog that just attacked them as 8 feet tall with 3 rows of teeth, and that is terrifying.
That's not a nice, attractive thought, no.
They do very cutely compare that they have matching monster scars, and they both process, and Vipin does not feel like Vipin's like, yeah, seeing is believing, but I'm not reassured that I saw anything.
Yeah, I was just listening to that and thinking, oh my gosh, time to trauma bond.
Yeah, they get to Anne's, where everyone has a great little reunion. Everyone's super glad that everybody else isn't dead, except for that Vipin and Olivia, of course, have the news that Celeste died and didn't make it through the other side, so everyone's a little bit sad about that. And Thomas meets Olivia and Vipin immediately is like, oh my god, you are Thomas Bradshaw, and that is a lot.
No hesitation.
Also blurts out that Olivia is Thomas's granddaughter, which is how Olivia finds out that Thomas exists.
Oh, this is gonna be a messy moment.
Yeah, finds out that Thomas is her grandfather and that he's here all at once. And this is also how Thomas finds out that Shelley doesn't know that Thomas is her father.
Whoops.
Which is very upsetting for him. But no one has time to be mad because Anne gets a call from a Dr. Edwards about some strange thing and the episode ends.
Time to be distracted.
Yeah, episode 13 is Bells and Rings. And Dr. Edwards is a vet and he's calling Anne because there's some eviscerated cattle. And apparently his father was also a vet who worked with Anne and Thomas on some of their weird cases back in the 70s. So that was fun. We love a good child takeover of a small business. Thomas says that there were some horses that were eviscerated back in 1979. And Olivia's really upset about all of the grandparent reveal. So she storms off and Anne's like, I gotta take care of this. So Jeremy, Thomas, and Vipin go together to see if the cattle evisceration was done by the 8-foot-tall giant dog that nearly killed Olivia and Vipin. And Anne.
Fair assessment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good assumption that it would be the same thing. No one wants there to be two monsters that can kill people running around. Olivia and Anne rehash the relationship thing, and we do get confirmation that Thomas and Anne were together for a year before Thomas officially left Jeremy's mother. And the reason that he did was because Anne was pregnant. So that's not great. We don't love that for them.
No, we don't. Also, I completely understand why Jeremy's mom doesn't like Anne.
Yeah, it suddenly makes a lot more sense. But also we found at some point that Anne and Jeremy's mom also did do some communicating in the wake of Thomas's disappearance.
Well, that's probably the only reasonable thing they did.
Anne says she kept Shelley's father a secret because of Jeremy, because the disappearance was so public, and she didn't want her affair to distract people from looking for Thomas or be so disruptive to the Bradshaws, and or just to have that attention on Shelley. Shelley was going to be a baby in the midst of all this, so she was also protecting Shelley. I see where that decision happened, but 10-15 years down the line, it would not have been too late to amend that decision. As Jeremy and Shelley aged, we could have revisited that choice. That was not a one and done choice.
Yeah, but if they were teenagers, this would be like a YA novel, so.
Thomas immediately becomes concerned at some point that perhaps Shelley and Jeremy might have accidentally dated each other as half-siblings and not known, and
I had that same thought.
Mm-hmm.
It did seem to be kind of implied that they were very friendly in season 1, so it was a little bit of a concern for me too. I was really glad to hear that was not a concern, actually.
Yeah, me too.
And it was never considered. I was very worried about that. I'm glad we took it off the table. Vipin and Thomas officially introduced themselves to one another because their initial introduction was completely derailed by the grandparent reveal. And Thomas immediately loves Vipin, which is correct. And I entirely based who I trusted this season on how much everybody liked Vipin and how Vipin was treated. It was my sole measurement by who's good and who's bad.
That's fair, honestly.
And you know what? It worked out, actually.
Vipin is our divining rod.
The cows are wrecked, but it's probably not the same thing that attacked Vipin and Olivia based on the timeline. It's not a person or an animal.
I'm sorry, just the way you phrase, the cows were wrecked. It was a wild night for them.
Basically, they're looking for something with 5 claws, canines, and something that likes to eat cow hearts. The jaw looks chimpanzee-like, but chimpanzees aren't usually big enough to get their jaw around a cow. So that's all kinds of confusing. Also, I'm on a limb, probably not a lot of chimpanzees just in the woods in Massachusetts.
If there were, we would know.
Yeah, that would be very unusual.
They're very smart and they're carnivores, so they would leave a trail.
Yeah. Thomas continues to be overwhelmed by the concept of a smartphone, which is very valid.
Yeah.
Jeremy has another breakdown.
I was going to say, considering when he went missing, computers took up entire rooms.
Oh yeah, he's shocked that thing could be a camera or a computer or anything.
Yeah.
He's even shocked that it could be a phone. Phones were giant back in the 70s. Jeremy has this another small breakdown about Thomas being back and them investigating monster attacks. And Thomas remembers that all of his neighbors' cows were also attacked back in 1940s. So there's a definite pattern between the 20-year cycle and also things that like to eat large animals. Thomas is also experiencing some pain that he kind of tries to blow off. And police captain Haddock shows up. So Jeremy's like, he might recognize you. So he sends Vipin and Thomas off with Jeremy's car, which would be fine, except for we later learn that Jeremy does not have a working cell phone on him at the moment. So he just was like, go and leave me, and did not make plans on how they were going to meet up. And I get that they were in a rush. He did not plan for how he was going to get off this farm.
That seems very in character.
Yeah. Alden went missing in 1940 from his own backyard, not even in the forest, and the only witness was his 10-year-old sister who heard bells. And Olivia also, in addition to doing that research, is not down to keep Thomas' secret from her mom. So she's like, you have to tell my mom about all of this really soon, and if you don't, I'm going to. She puts Anne on a deadline, and Jeremy and Officer Haddock have a very tense exchange. It's one of those things where you're like fake nice and fake polite, and someone at the end of the conversation is like, you better not be messing with things, like I'm warning you not to get involved in things that you're not meant to be involved with. Very standard exchange between two fictional characters. I was honestly, after that exchange, expecting Officer Haddock to be more of a problem this season, and he really wasn't.
Yeah, he was only in like one episode.
Yep. Not really a problem for the rest of the season. I was expecting more of that to be an issue, but
I feel like there was a lot of that.
Jeremy is going to have to walk to a bus stop. I'm not sure what the public transportation is like in Bridgewater, but I have gotten the impression that Bridgewater is quite small based on this, and so the idea of like there just being bus stops to bus you into town just was a little odd to me, but kudos to you for having good public transportation. We also hear Vipin in the car using his turn signal, and I just want to say good job.
Good, he's not one of those people.
Yeah, there was a lot more additional background noise happening in this season. I don't know if that was because they were able to record more in studio this season, so like the audio quality was better. But there was a lot more of that world building audio work being done, and I really like that. I also I'm happy to know Vipin's a safe driver who uses the turn signal appropriately.
Yeah, that sounds very Vipin of him.
Thomas says that he was 25 when he had Jeremy, meaning he's either 37 or 38 years old currently, I think.
Wait, 25.
Which is bad math, right?
Yeah. Plus,
it should be 32 or 33.
It'll be 32, yeah.
I should never be trusted to do math. As I was saying that, I'm like, that math not add up.
It's okay. You have other good traits.
I have other good traits. Math doing it. It's weird because certain math I can't do. I can't do basic math. I can do division on paper, but I can't do basic addition. I can't add 7 and 25. Anyway, Thomas says that Alden saw mushrooms growing in a circle, which caused Vipin to get very excited. He pulls up to Anne's house and he bolts into the house, and Olivia and Vipin have simultaneous excited realization that they're possibly dealing with the Fey realm. And that was when I was like, Meredith needs to get caught up because I need to know what Meredith thinks about the introduction of the Fey realm.
The answer was Meredith was very excited. I heard about the circle of mushrooms and I was like, oh, are they going where I think they're going?
And then they did.
Okay, I'll admit I was thinking of the Fey realm in season 1 too, but I didn't actually expect them to introduce it.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of idea, honestly, in season 1 of what the fuck was happening in Bridgewater.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of the woods and lights in the woods and little creatures calling to you and thought, oh, it sounds like fairies. But I wasn't actually expecting them to go there.
Before we go on, plot-wise, overall, do you think they did a good job with the Fey realm depiction in the season? Were you excited about it? Was there things that annoyed you about it?
Okay, nothing that I can think of at the moment really annoyed me. Maybe something will come up later, but no, I think I was pretty satisfied with it.
There's nothing off the top of your head that you're like, this is very inaccurate to what you've studied.
No, nothing off the top of my head. Obviously there's...
It's not very well researched, honestly, and fairly respectfully researched, I would say. Yeah,
and obviously there's going to be some interpretation because this is fiction, and
when you're telling a story, you kind of just go, there's so many different versions of every single myth and legend. You kind of just go with the one that fits your story the best, what you're trying to do.
Yeah, obviously they didn't include everything, but they couldn't because, there's, as they pointed out,
there's 12 episodes.
There's a lot of information about fairies out there.
Yeah, there's 12 episodes, and we also have a very strong family drama element happening as well that we have to devote time to. Jeremy missed the bus back to Bridgewater, so he meets the legend tripper, who is a woman who's on her way to see the cattle mutilation that Jeremy's just come from. Although apparently we've learned that this is walking distance away, so she could just walk the rest of the way.
True, which is...
I don't know why she's waiting for this bus in the middle of nowhere. That's actually kind of suspicious.
Weird vibe number 1.
Mm-hmm. It's a very important note that the legend tripper does not have a name, does not give her name, and knows Jeremy's name, even though he never gave it to her. I don't remember noticing that on my first listen ever, but I do remember when we got the credits for this episode, thinking, oh, this actress has a character that doesn't have a real name. That kind of sucks.
I noticed, and I was
noticed
listening.
too.
I was listening to the credits of like the other episodes and thinking, oh, Trisha Helfer's in this as the Legend Tripper. That sounds interesting. And so I was wondering, like, I assumed she would just be in like one episode because she doesn't have a name.
Yeah, the more she showed up and the more she didn't have stuff, I was like, oh, like maybe her identity is going to be a reveal, and like they don't want to like give it away, and like once she has a name, then they'll change it.
And I thought it was so weird that,
but I just still didn't put it together.
And like he never realized when he was talking about her to other people that he never got her name.
No, he really didn't. I honestly didn't notice till Vipin was very clear about pointing it out.
Yeah,
in a later
it was
episode.
So weird, and it was starting to bug me. Like every time she showed up, like, they tried to blindside me with Trisha Helfer, and then it didn't work.
Episode 14 is called Borrowing Trouble, and Jeremy's on the phone with Dean, whose name is Linda, and she's not thrilled that Jeremy took an unexpected day or two off without calling into work. He's claiming a family emergency. You should still call if you're having a family emergency, but like, I don't blame Jeremy for forgetting that he had a job. Katie shows up at his job very upset because Jeremy didn't call her and tell her that her friend and mentor Celeste died.
Is it bad that at this point I was like, oh my gosh, shut up, Katie?
That was also Jeremy's reaction. Jeremy's like, it's been a very crazy last 3 days. So I'm going to say that this is Friday, day 18. Because she showed up on Monday night. Or, no, she showed up on Tuesday, I think. Tuesday night.
Yeah. Like, obviously she has the right to know that Celeste was dead. But
so, yeah. So that was Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, today's Friday. But, yeah, obviously she has the right to be upset. And Katie's like, things should be calming down, and they're not. And a leader of another chapter of the Gathering, the Historic Triangle of Virginia, is coming to town to help deal with things. Her name's Peyton Blake, and she's, like, very young for a Gathering leader. And Katie doesn't sound like she likes Peyton at all, but it turns out she really just, like, wants out of the whole Gathering of everything. She is not down. She was a believer, and she's too freaked out now. Things have gone too far for Katie.
She is not having a good time.
Vipin and Olivia are giving Thomas a 2020 makeover. They've shaved his 1970s white guy first responder stash.
I thought that part was so funny.
It was so funny. I'm watching Tacoma FD right now, and 3 of the 5 main characters have that mustache.
Like a thing? Like,
I think it's because I don't know why it would be a thing for a police officer. I think with firefighters it's a thing because you can't have a beard, but you can have a mustache. So I think they just go with whatever facial hair they're allowed.
Good, because my theory was going to be like a hive mind or something.
But also I just think that was very popular in the 70s for everybody.
It was, yeah.
Generally. But I think first responders have kept it, because if you have to wear a respirator, yeah, you're not supposed to have facial hair because it can affect the seal.
Yeah.
They also dress him like Jeremy, and they're like freaked out by how similar Jeremy and Thomas look. So now I'm just going to be picturing Misha Collins. And then they dress him like Dean Winchester just to make me go insane. And that's the final look of Thomas for the rest of this season. Just whatever you think Dean Winchester would wear. We have a Henley and a bomber jacket and dark jeans. That's the look.
There we go. I thought it was funny that they were like, okay, so no sweater then, because now I know that Jeremy dresses, exactly like a nerdy professor.
Yeah. Vipin and Olivia talk about their families, their grandparents, and Vipin says he was really interested in religion as a kid, and he's kind of settled on not organized religion. Nothing's ever really felt right, and he's really done his homework. He's really kind of explored the field of organized religion, so that feels like a very respectful way to be anti-religious.
Yeah.
As opposed to me, you just opt out of all of them. Olivia suggests that Vipin should officially ask her out before she meets his family, which is just so cute. I'm really sticking to the plot in this kind of recap, but I did tune in almost more for Vipin and Olivia content this season than anything else.
Their relationship was a bright spot in a chaos hailstorm of angst.
So cute.
They really were.
Please, I need the children to be happy.
Jeremy heads back to Anne's, and they're both worried about Thomas's health. And Jeremy has a realization that Anne's guest room was going to be his bedroom, and Anne kind of paints this picture of them living as a family. That didn't happen. And Jeremy really wants some idea of what their future as a family is going to look like, but they just don't really know anything yet. And Anne accepts that she's missed her life with Thomas, but she would give anything for Jeremy and Shelley to have had that life with their father that they missed out on. And Jeremy just kind of wants to be like the Gathering and the Legend Trippers, and everyone else can take care of things, and we can breathe And Anne's
But
like, no, things are getting really bad, and they're going to keep getting bad, and we're not going to have time to breathe. Vipin and Olivia are explaining the darker hearts of the Fey Realm myths to Thomas and theorizing about some possibilities of what they could be looking forward to. Vipin starts plugging a bunch of other mythologies into the framework of the Fey Realm being real: Greek mythology, indigenous oral traditions, a few others. And I thought that was a really great way to like respectfully tie other cultures into this Fey Realm idea.
Yeah, I really liked the idea, like the concept they went with of all the mythology being true. And
yeah, it's all a variation of like this thing that is real.
But also, I think it really stuck to a lot of the themes that lore has, which is like looking for similarities between all of these different stories all over the world.
Yeah, so obviously like an angle that Aaron Mankey's like very comfortable making.
Oh yeah.
But it just also felt like a really great way to like not discount these other like other groups and other cultures while still tying it all into this narrative that we're going with. Jeremy's having another meltdown about monsters being real. Life's work is fraudulent because this whole area of study was the human aspect of storytelling and folklore, and how it turns out like culture wasn't the thing that those stories had in common. It turns out like people were just seeing the same monsters, which feels a little Aaron Mankey self-inserty, but I kind of like it.
I don't mind. I've probably done the same thing.
And Jeremy doesn't want to keep investigating and look for more problems, and just wants to focus on this second chance that he has with his dad because he's not sure that Thomas won't be taken from him again. And then Anne's house is like attacked. There's like an earthquake type thing, and then everything's like really unnaturally quiet, and they kind of feel like they're like not where they actually are. It's super weird. I use attacked in like quotes because like nothing actually happens to them except for
it was creepy though.
It was creepy. The absence of sound is really creepy.
Yeah, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Olivia takes Thomas to the bank that her mother works at and introduces Shelley and Thomas with no context. They're just like, hey, this guy's Thomas Bradshaw. He's been missing since 1980. He still looks exactly the same. He's been in a middle space, and he's also your dad.
Which goes about as well as you might expect.
Yeah, clearly fine. Nobody have any problems with that at all.
Throughout this entire interaction, I was just like, oh yeah, she's related to Anne. They're both related to Anne.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love how Olivia does it at work. She's like, I know my mom can't have a freak out when she's at work because she's got to be professional.
Yeah, because the bank and banks are quiet.
Yeah.
So funny.
Exactly.
She can't scream at us here.
And then Thomas says that after Jeremy went missing, it was really quiet like that. And then Thomas gets really dizzy and he passes out and the episode ends. I think it's really interesting that Thomas like gets really dizzy like that because later they kind of confirm that like that really quiet means that they're in the liminal space. And I think it's really interesting. Episode 15 is The Seekers, and new gathering leader Peyton is here, and she is very convinced that there's some sort of rip in the Bridgewater Triangle and it needs to be fixed, and the gathering people are really into her speech about it. They're big fans of Peyton. This felt a little too rally
Hold up little signs,
for me, and I was like, I don't know if I trust Peyton off this speech. Jeremy and Thomas are shopping for food, and it's still the same day. It's still Thursday afternoon or Friday afternoon. The gathering is in the speech. Thomas and Jeremy are shopping. Thomas asks about Jeremy's mom, and Jeremy says he's not really close with his mom, which is really sad because he only had his mom, and he didn't even have Anne. So like the fact that they're not close is really sad. Jeremy's just not close with anybody. He has no close relationships except for Vipin. Jeremy is on his fourth freakout of the last 24 hours in the middle of the grocery store.
That's fair.
Thomas admits that he met Shelley, and Jeremy is just like, I can't even worry about that right now. And Thomas just says he's always been good in a crisis, and they've got a really great group of people. So Jeremy is trying to worry about everything all at once, and he doesn't need to because some of those worries can be taken on by the rest of the group. Vipin and Olivia go to meet the paranormal seekers, who are like some of the legend trippers. The other legend trippers did not hear about the cattle mutilations that Jeremy's legend tripper friend did, so they did not communicate that back and forth. One of them is very excited that Vipin is the owl attack guy because he works at the hospital and he did not violate HIPAA and talk about it to his friends. Congrats to you, guy. Didn't write his name down.
It was interesting listening to them because I feel like this is the part where I got annoyed. Just the astrology person talking about planets, and there's I don't know. I forget what else was mentioned. It was very funny, but like the reason I got annoyed was because I wanted to argue with them so badly.
It's giving the same energy that I feel like I sometimes give when I talk about Supernatural.
Yeah, like, they're very passionate people.
Yeah, on like something that we don't like. Not everyone in the group agrees about. This is the spirit of the conversation that we would be having.
Yeah, and like I wanted to give them my opinion, but I couldn't because they don't exist.
I felt the astrology girl. That would be me if I had to defend Sam Winchester.
Oh gosh.
Like that is the vibe of like you like with a bunch of friends that you geek out, but you geek out differently. And we learned from these people that there's been 3 Bigfoot sightings. I said 3 Bigfoot sightings and then Bigfoot sighting, which means that there was a sighting of something else, and I don't know what it was. A bunch of UFO and ghost sightings. Will-o'-the-wisp. One of them mentions a redheaded hitchhiker, and I thought that might be Jeremy's legend tripper. Like she might be like some sort of like ghost hitchhiker situation. That was not it. But just because we hadn't really got a description of her, and I was like, she was kind of just hanging out at a bus stop for no real reason.
I was just picturing Trisha Helfer in jeans.
Vipin explains ley lines to us for reasons. Okay, it's so weird how much of this stuff I did not need explained to me. Like Vipin or Thomas or Jeremy or Anne or Olivia, somebody would explain something to me, and I'm like, I know about this Fey realm thing. I don't know where I picked all this shit up, but I mean, actually, you know what I do? I was pretty interested in all of this stuff for a very long time. Actually, you know,
it is pretty cool.
It makes sense that I know this stuff, but it's just kind of been sitting in the back of my brain. Vipin warns against not using the "you can't prove a negative" to like win an argument. Everybody in this group is very clear that no matter how we're like making arguments, how we're deciding what is real and what's not real, no one wants to support pseudoscience, which is good. I'm really glad everybody was on the same page about that.
Yes, please.
Everybody's like, well, if you say you can't prove a negative, you can basically say whatever the fuck you want and say that it can't be disproven. So I'm really glad everybody was on that same page with that, because that shit's dangerous. Vipin and Olivia make great inroads to paranormal seekers. These paranormal seekers are big fans and ready to be friends.
That was so much fun. They just seem like a fun crew.
Yeah, they're just like, you seem way more connected than us, and we have a bunch of data. We'll just give it to you. And we also find out Vipin has accidentally focused research a little too narrowly. He's only been focusing on things that happened between 1979 and 1981. So that's not great, because we learned that like some of the weird shit happened earlier than that, like 75. So we've been missing some information.
Side note, was anyone else expecting the giant snakes to be like a bigger problem than they actually were?
The basilisk snakes? Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I agree. We did not see any basilisk snakes this season, and we didn't really get an explanation for what they were doing.
They were just hanging out, you know, turning things to stone.
Yeah.
Killing plants.
Jeremy is having another dream about when he was lost in the woods as a child, and he decides to go for a walk on his own, because that's always a great idea. He runs into the legend tripper again around the same place where Celeste died, and
suspicious.
Yeah, very suspicious. She says she got lost in the woods as a kid for an entire night wandering in the woods, and they bond over the mutual lost in the woods experience, which has suddenly returned to Jeremy with startling clarity for the first time in 40 years. He suddenly has some memory of this for the first time. It's not his full memory, obviously, but he has a memory for the first time.
At this point, was anyone else thinking of the part in season 1 where they were talking about how Anne found a girl who had gotten lost in the woods?
Yes,
I hadn't, but it turns out that it very much was something similar.
Yeah, and I was surprised that Jeremy didn't think of that, because like it was one of the like the big creepy stories of season 1.
Yeah, and it turns out it was very relevant to this exact scenario.
Yeah.
But Jeremy didn't even think to ask her name, so I wasn't even concerned with Jeremy at this point. Yeah,
I don't trust Jeremy. Jeremy is good at research and not investigation, which is why he should always be paired up with Anne or Thomas.
Well, also,
Exactly.
it's implied that she has an effect on humans, and
that
she
too.
can kind of manipulate like their perceptions in a bit.
And Jeremy specifically, she's got a whole thing. But Jeremy then gets a phone call from Thomas, and they're gonna go meet up to look into the most recent Bigfoot sighting. And the legend trooper declines the invitation to join them, but Jeremy takes her phone number. I honestly, even though I didn't notice that the legend trooper didn't give us her name, and obviously on my second listen I knew who the legend trooper was, but I feel like if I had been taking notes on my first listen, I absolutely would have noticed the name thing sooner, because writing out the legend trooper over and over again really drives home the fact that she does not have a fucking name.
Right? That's such a long thing to type.
And I'm also really annoyed because I immediately, the second that they gave Jeremy's mother a first name for the first time in 2 seasons, I immediately took note of that. And I didn't notice that the legend trooper still didn't have a name. But I also think it's because I don't give people names. Like, I don't refer to people by their names when I'm talking to them usually, unless I'm like actively trying to get your attention. I'm not like saying your name on a that's part of the reason why I'm so bad at names, because I don't incorporate them into my speech pattern at all.
Yeah, I got tired of writing Legend Tripper, and her voice kind of reminded me of Julia Roberts, so I started referring to her as Julia Roberts so I could have a name.
That's incredible. In the last episode, does give herself a name, so like that was helpful.
Yeah.
But to prevent myself from becoming more confused, I did just call her the Legend Tripper the whole time. But I actually kind of love that style of note taking. Thomas is super pissed that Jeremy went to the lake by himself, but Anne is like, we do not have time to have a fight about this right now.
We're having fights about everything else.
And then Thomas says that he's the monster-facing guy and Jeremy's the book guy. And Jeremy's like, well, clearly that didn't work out for you. And all I can think about is like, this is what early seasons Dean wants his relationship with Sam to be. Sam's the book guy and Dean's the face the monsters guy, even though Sam's clearly also the face the monsters guy. I feel like it's natural. Being the book guy does sound like a safer thing for the most part.
It should, but like in a fantasy series,
nobody's safe, actually.
There is a possibility that the books could eat you. Like,
I will say only 2 people break bones in this season. One's Jeremy and one's Vipin. So
I know, right?
Those are the 2 book guys.
There were a few times where I was expecting like way more blood, but it's just broken bones.
I'm surprised Vipin and Olivia got out as good as they did. Like, clearly they were very injured. There was some talk about stitches. Like, they actually came out pretty okay from their fight with the dog with the 3 rows of teeth.
Yeah. I feel like they mentioned black dogs when they were talking about the dog, right?
Yeah, they did.
I was thinking of black dogs the whole time, and I did a project in university that involved black dogs, so I got pretty excited.
They come face to face with the Bigfoot, so that ends all arguing. But they do kind of get separated, and I was like, I'm really concerned about how often Anne's been running through the woods lately. She's been doing that a lot. Peyton shows up, and she deters the Bigfoot from eating them, and they all need to have a chat, and that's where the episode ends.
Fair, yeah. I feel like that's overdue. Get to know Peyton.
I'm honestly surprised it took the whole episode for them to meet up with Peyton. But episode 16 is the Howler, and Peyton wants them to go somewhere with her, but she knows all about Thomas, and she wants them to get on a bus because the swamp is not fully protected, and also the bus is made of steel, which is an iron alloy. I don't know. I breezed over that whole explanation. I didn't fully care.
Fairies don't like touching iron, basically.
Yeah. What I wrote for that is buses are safe from Fae. That's all I needed to know.
As I'm sure are many things, to be honest. Like, we make a lot of things with iron or iron-based metals.
Yes, and now we know why.
I kind of thought that the iron had to be like pure iron, but I think that may just be like a case-by-case basis.
In a lot of stories I've read, they've extended it to like even the iron in your blood.
Oh wow, that feels excessive. But also, I'd be in trouble because I'm anemic.
Oh no!
Peyton wants them to go with her, so they do. Peyton says things are not just off balance, but they're straight up broken, and it's all Thomas's fault.
Oh, that's nice.
They make a Dr. Facilier, I've got friends on the other side reference. I think it's Jeremy goes, what, you have like a buddy over there or something? Which I thought was very funny.
Jeremy doesn't get very many chances to be funny.
I then wrote Python when I meant to write Peyton.
You just really wanted those snakes to come back.
I really did. I don't like snakes at all, guys. Explains the deal that the Fae realm doesn't bother us, we don't bother them. Some places the Veil is more accessible, and there are other like entrances to the liminal spaces, but they need 2 souls, and in Bridgewater they need to be willing, and one needs to be new every 40 years. Because Thomas wasn't willing, it made things super weird for the last 40 years, and now that he's out, the door is wide open because they're down a person.
Made him topsy-turvy.
Which is honestly a little sad, because that means if the door is wide open anyway, it kind of sucks that Alden's still stuck in there.
You can't find the damn door.
I remember in my first listen, I don't think I wrote this in my notes at any point. In my first listen, I did not trust Alden to just be like a 7-year-old. I really thought Alden was going to turn out to be some sort of like Fae trick, and like if we got Alden out, something bad would happen.
Wow, remarkably, I just thought of him like as a 7-year-old. I wasn't suspicious of him.
I was really suspicious of him. I don't know why. It turns out to be false. So sorry to Alden.
I think I was too focused on being suspicious of the Legend Tripper.
I was not suspicious enough of the Legend Tripper, and and I was 2 stitches of the small child.
Oh gosh,
I mean, fair enough. Small children in spooky things never goes well.
this is true.
Peyton agrees that it doesn't need to be Thomas that goes back in, but somebody needs to go into the liminal, and she can't think of anyone else who would be more likely to do it or like have more of a reason to do it because Thomas is already out of place and out of time.
I hate that she ends up being right.
Yeah, and Peyton says the monsters aren't the biggest problem because the boundary will full on collapse and the worlds will just keep bleeding into one another, and that would apparently be really bad. It's now day 20, which should be Saturday, but it seems to be Friday again because Jeremy and Pippin have a lecture to give, and I just assume that they don't give lectures on the weekend.
Most people don't.
Well, I was gonna say, in America, some colleges do go on Saturdays.
Oh
Oh,
my
that's
god.
so stupid.
You're
Yeah.
paying that much money a year and you have to go to school on Saturday? I call bullshit. At my university, even having a Friday afternoon class was like a rare thing. Like, if there were classes on Fridays, they were always Friday mornings. I never in 4 years of university had a Friday class.
Yeah, I should have gone to Canada.
Yeah, I would work on Fridays. I would go to my job on Fridays, but I wouldn't go to school. But anyway,
I'm in the wrong country. Damn.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true for all schools, but it was absolutely true for our schools. I remember I had an exam on a Saturday once, and I was real pissed about it.
Oh, yeah. I would be too.
Jeremy calls the legend trooper to see if she knows anything about Peyton. He rambles way too much on her voicemail because they have a little bit of a vibe going, which is going to be a thing later.
Yeah, I thought it was very compelling, but at the same time, I was just like, if they end up a couple, I swear I'm gonna riot.
Well, no, because it turns out that Jeremy's fully an asexual man.
Yes! Victory!
I feel 100% confident about that assessment of Jeremy's character.
Yeah, I really feel like he's, like, on both, like, spectrums, like, aromantic and ace.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like, you can be ace, but, like, still be into romance, and he seems
Yeah.
like he's not into either one.
He's very bad at flirting.
He's
Most
definitely
people
not.
are.
He can't even leave this
Yeah.
voicemail. Like, this voicemail is too
No.
much.
Yeah.
But Vivian shows up, and Jeremy somehow managed to put the whole Bigfoot encounter and Peyton situation into a text message, and I would love to read that text message. He texted Vivian about that.
I wonder
When
if
he
there
got
were
home.
any emojis.
I would just like to know what that text message thread was like. Olivia is freaking out, but she's still really on board to help and figure out all of this. And Thomas wants her help looking into Alden. Shelley shows up at Anne's house, kind of unexpectedly. Even to her, she wasn't planning on coming here, but she is fully putting in. Like, she saw Anne leaving, and she was like, okay, now I can go.
That's fair.
She's really distressed to learn about Alden because her son recently went missing in the woods, and she also had to reveal that her dad was stuck in a liminal space for 40 years. So learning that there was a kid in there was very upsetting for her. And also, Thomas is like, I think maybe Jeremy was also supposed to get taken in there. So that's like a triple upsetting family. That is 3 generations in a row. Not a great track record for this family at all. And Shelley's really devastated because she didn't even have stories about Thomas. Like, Anne just didn't talk about Thomas. He's a complete stranger to her. And Thomas says he took Alden in as a child the way that he cared for Jeremy and the way he would have cared for Shelley. And neither of them need a father now. And he just feels like he wants to belong to her. And I really like the phrase, I want to belong to you instead of I want you to belong to me, from Dad Thomas here, because I just feel like the idea of your kids belonging to you can be a little like oppressive in certain contexts. So I just really liked the phrasing of like him wanting to belong to her as her dad.
Yeah, the scene was so emotional.
It was very
It
nice.
was.
Shelley then says almost the exact same thing that Jeremy said in episode 11. She says, "Are you real? I don't even know what to ask you," which is pretty much word for word what Jeremy said in a couple episodes ago when Thomas got back. So that's fun. Thomas reconfirms that it's 2020. I do like to just have that. Anytime we have a confirmation on any timeline, I do just like to note it. Shelley's not ready to factor Jeremy into the equation of her changing family situation. She also notes that she has Thomas's nose, which is something that Jeremy doesn't have, even though Thomas and Jeremy look a lot alike. They're not identical,
That's convenient.
which is
I
good.
think.
It's good to know that Bradshaw got some genes in there when she gave birth to Jeremy. I always think it's a little sad when like the mom like doesn't get any features. Like, obviously, like in early years, children look more like biological dads. It's kind of an evolutionary thing. But pregnancy and childbirth are a lot on a woman's body. The least you could get is for the kid to look a little bit like you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas is also worried about being sent back into the liminal. He spent more time in the liminal than he did alive. And he also keeps having these dizzy spells, and he's just not really certain that he'll be staying. So he's kind of like a little hesitant about like making any promises to Shelley for that reason, which I thought was like very, I don't know, emotionally mature, sensitive. I don't know.
What are we talking about?
That Thomas, like, it doesn't want to like make Shelley any promises because he has a feeling he's not like gonna be staying. So he doesn't like want to get, he doesn't want her to be too emotionally attached to him, even though he really wants them to have a relationship.
Yeah. I don't like that actually turned out to be a good idea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Olivia says she feels kind of more like Thomas is her cousin than her grandfather because she's 22 and he's in his mid-30s.
Fair.
And,
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I do like how Olivia called Thomas her new grandpa. I thought that was cute.
Yeah.
I feel like Olivia was handling this situation better than anyone else in the family.
Has grandparents on her dad's side. So, like, it's also, like, kind of a little bit, like, wants to separate those. Because, like, she grew up with her other grandparents. Like, they were involved in her life. And Anne, they spent a lot of time in Anne's as kids, too. Like, so, you know, it's nice that they're bonding. Thomas is struggling, because he feels like Jeremy's still, like, a little kid. And it's really hard to connect that with, like, the middle-aged man that is standing in front of him. And it was really upset. And Olivia is like, you know, help you bridge that gap, Vipin. Because Jeremy has no friends in his life, but Vipin is basically his best friend. And they just got on a first name basis like 2 weeks ago.
When she was saying that, I was like, oh gosh, I don't like how that's such an accurate assessment.
But it's really true. And in season 1, Jeremy was like, oh, hey, yeah, actually, I don't have any friends. Like, Shelley's husband, whose first name I can't currently remember off the top of my head.
Joseph,
yeah. Like, they were academic rivals, but in season 1, Jeremy was like, that guy, we both turned out really great, but, like, that guy has it better than I do because he has a loving family.
so sad.
And it makes it makes me not believe some of the things that Jeremy goes on to say in this season about his life. I don't fully believe him.
Yeah.
Also, I really related to this because being a Supernatural fan and a Once Upon a Time fan, I have dealt with the parent missing child's entire relationship and then ending up being younger than them / the same age as them too many times. I've seen this play out too many times. And it's bad for everybody.
It's weird that that's a trope now.
I of these
it's
three.
Like if I had a nickel.
Nickels. And that's just things that I personally watch / listen to. But Jeremy does have at least one friend. Her name's Sophie, and she went to the school with Jeremy at Oxford. And he calls her. They've done a complete 180 on the skeptic-believer scale since they went to school together. Jeremy used to be a skeptic, and she was a believer. Now she is still a believer, but like a little bit less. And Jeremy has come around on the belief. But she is very knowledgeable about the Fae realm, and Jeremy asks too many very specific questions for Sophie's liking.
I was just imagining this whole thing from Sophie's perspective. Like, she's just going about her life, and then Jeremy calls, sounding like he's about to hunt down the Fae, and then she's like, well, that was weird, and has to move on.
This does feel a little bit to me like somebody calling me up, because, I did my degree in criminal justice, and, like, asking me too many questions about, like, how to get out of a hostage situation. I'm in a hostage situation right now.
Are you alright?
That is exactly what that felt like to me.
See, Sophie, how do I kill the Fae?
She does have some very good advice about not entering into a contract with them, and if you do, then like you're just kind of screwed unless you have leverage. But she becomes very concerned about his like questions and like his questions simply about how to like kill the Fae. And the Legend Trooper and Jeremy meet up again in Freetown Forest, and she shows him like a gesture / room for safety and protection.
I actually can't remember what Sophie said about how to kill the Fae, because I think I had my own thoughts about it.
I think she basically said like, we don't really know and you should really try.
Yeah, because I don't know. I don't know as much as she does, obviously. I don't even know as much as I want to. But I do know that in a lot of Celtic legends, it's pretty hit or miss whether you can kill anything, because things come back to life.
Yeah, I think that was
the time.
I don't remember what exactly Sophie said about that, but it did feel a little bit like she was like, well, I don't know how anyone would actually know one way or another, but like these are the theories and they aren't great. They're not super viable plans.
No. And also the Fae trick people all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Legend Trooper shows Jeremy this like gesture rune thing to do for safety / protection that she learned at some like Legend Trooper convention meetup thing. And Peyton and Thomas are also having a meetup, you know, without Jeremy yelling at either of them about his feelings about things. And he wants to know what he'd have to do to put things right, and she's going to tell him. We don't hear that conversation, but we can just assume it's pretty much like go into Fey Realm / into the liminal. Episode 17 is called Going in Circles, and an unlucky camper gets completely torn apart in the woods while their partner watches. I'm guessing by the Hockamock Howler, which is what Jeremy named the Bigfoot, because the Bigfoot didn't have enough fucking names to start with. Jeremy's like, I'm gonna name it too.
This one has an alliteration though.
Yeah, he really named it Hockamock Howler just to be fun, and I skipped over it in the previous episode, but then I was annoyed. It's also why the like previous episode was called The Howler. Just yeah, that was Jeremy's fault.
I was proud of him.
I was annoyed.
It was one of the only times he got to be funny.
Pretty much everyone calls it a Bigfoot. I think Olivia maybe calls it the Sasquatch at one point in one of the episodes. Like if Bigfoot already has a bunch of names, like it already has numerous names. We don't need to be making that list any longer.
Also the Yeti.
Vipin hears about the death on the radio on his way to meet Peyton for breakfast, because everyone's just having secret meetups with Peyton. Because Jeremy is just so unproductive about Peyton's existence that like no one else can get a word in.
I feel like Jeremy is just kind of shutting down at this point.
Also, like Peyton wanted to meet with Jeremy, and Jeremy sent Vipin. Peyton doesn't love that Jeremy did that, but Jeremy and Thomas are hanging out, going over what they know about the Fey Realm / Bigfoot, talking about the camper. They're very concerned. They're, I think, going to look at the campsite. Olivia and Anne are at the place where Alden went missing from, finding absolutely nothing so far. And Olivia's really worried about falling into some sort of trap. Like they're out there wandering in the woods looking for something weird, and she's like a little worried about finding it, because she's like, there's a Bradshaw Becker Haas gene that makes us want to go wandering into the woods and find supernatural things, and a part of her does want to see something supernatural. And yeah, Olivia, that's a valid concern.
Yeah, at this point I feel like their family hasn't really been targeted. I feel like they just kind of
they've been out in the woods wandering at the wrong time.
Like, no, for once in a fantasy story you did this to yourself.
Because Anne and Olivia had the weird house thing happen to them, but like that's kind of like the worst that's happened to them. Shelley, we don't think anything's happened to Shelley as far as we know. Jeremy's been gone missing. Thomas was in the liminal. Ethan went missing. It's not a great track record for the family.
Gotta stay out of those woods.
Stay out of the woods.
Olivia makes a joke about not being able to text if you do make it into the Fey Realm, and Anne has this sudden realization that they never found out how Thomas sent the voicemails, so they're like in a hurry to get home now and find Thomas.
Yeah, I was surprised that they didn't ask him about that right away.
Me too, and Anne kind of mentioned it, I think at the like when Thomas very first came, actually mentioned something of voicemails, but like I think Thomas was really overwhelmed. He didn't really like register what she had said, and it turns out he had no idea he was even doing it. So
yeah, that's fair. I feel like there was a lot going on, and I guess the voicemails kind of fell to the wayside.
They just forgot to circle back to it, honestly, and I think Anne just like assumed that Thomas would have mentioned it if it was important. But Peyton says that the gateway can be opened more or less by how much people believe, which is why there used to be more like supernatural stuff happening, because people were more open to that idea back in the day. And she says it takes just one leader of not passing down the key information for things to break down the way that they have here, and she doesn't really know how many gates there are. Like she just focuses on her own gate and doesn't worry about the others, but like she felt that there was something wrong here, so she came here.
Was anyone else thinking of Peter Pan?
A little bit.
Half of you believe in fairies.
And Vipin full on made the reference, which was very nice.
I forgot he did that. I'm so happy.
But now when I hear that, I think it's supernatural. Peyton says her father was the leader in Virginia, and he's gone because the previous leader is the next volunteer to go into the liminal. So she'll be the next person to go into the liminal, and she doesn't know what that means, but like she'll be the replacement. And like in the meantime, she gets to like live her life to whatever she wants to be, and like train her replacement, which is good because clearly that didn't happen. And now everyone who knows anything is either like a Bradshaw, Becker, Hoskins, or is dead. So
yay!
Yeah, good times. Thomas is the only person that Peyton knows of who's like gone in and come back out, and so she just thinks that Thomas can't have a good life here anyways. No matter what he does, he's like lost that time and he can't get it back, and things are just over. She also assumed that Anne and Thomas were married, which I thought was like very cute. Thomas wants to take the night off and have a burger with Jeremy and just have time with his son, and he wants to know all about Jeremy's life and maybe go to one of his lectures. Jeremy's like, my students have been studying you a lot, and like even with your makeover, they might recognize you. So we shouldn't do that. He's like, well, next semester, and I'm really sad that didn't happen. But also in terms of, I also think Jeremy's also like a little self-conscious because he's been struggling every single time he's been at school, and we've had a scene with Jeremy like immediately after a lecture. He's been like, that lecture was horrible. I'm having such a hard time reconciling my work with my new belief and the fact that it's all real. So I feel like that also might be part of the reason why he doesn't want his dad there. And Jeremy also confirmed he has no life outside of academia. He's never been interested in dating or having a family, despite the high value he placed on family in season 1. And Thomas sounds up like he was like a really straight up good dad. His very small child was his favorite person in the world to hang out with. He took delight in seeing the world through Jeremy's exploration of it. Like, this was a very attentive father for a guy who had a full-time job and 2 ongoing relationships.
Like, at least he was a good dad. Even if he kind of sucked as a husband.
Like, he had a full-time job, a wife, and a girlfriend. And he was doing a lot of investigating of all this weird supernatural stuff. And he was still like, I am spending a lot of time with my 7-year-old. And like, kids are sometimes not the most fun to hang out with. Like, they can be, but they can also, for an adult, not be the most fun. Like, some people just do not enjoy being around children, and Thomas loves children. And I just feel like, it's actually really tragic that he didn't get to spend the time with Jeremy. And like, how much fun could he and Alden have had in the void, the liminal space?
Right? You could teach him how to throw using a rock or something.
If there was rocks.
There were rocks. I just decided.
Thomas is really concerned that Jeremy's unhappy and unfulfilled, and Jeremy's like, I can be fulfilled with what I have, and he doesn't feel like he was condemned to misery. And we also know that Thomas was also raised by a single parent, which was a new detail about Thomas. And I would like to say you absolutely do not need to partner up or have a family to be fulfilled. Like, Jeremy's absolutely right, but you also can't be completely alone. Like, Jeremy doesn't have any friends either.
Yeah, and I think that's the sad thing about him. Like, he's
like
obviously like he's obviously like on the aromantic asexual spectrums, and that's perfectly fine.
But human beings are innately social creatures. Even the most introverted people do need to have relationships with people.
Yeah, like he needs more friends. He needs more people to talk to. He needs even just to spend time with outside of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I totally understand why Thomas is concerned. Thomas and Anne say that they were going to have primary custody of Jeremy, which we don't know anything about Jeremy's mom and what kind of parent she was, but that's very unusual for 1980 for the dad to get primary custody.
Yeah, I thought that was really weird, especially because he was cheating on her.
Yeah, I mean, we can assume that maybe they didn't go through a court process for this, was kind of my assumption, like that they had kind of worked things out outside of court based on how many times they've said we were working things out.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering.
But considering how uninvolved Jeremy is with his mom now, even though she raised him by herself, and the fact that Thomas and Anne were going to have primary custody of Jeremy kind of makes me think like maybe Thomas was such an attentive parent that like maybe Nancy wasn't.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, it made me wonder, like, just how much she wanted to raise Jeremy.
Yeah, I also had that concern. Thomas does say they were working on shared custody, but like Jeremy would have lived with Anne and Thomas. Thomas says he never pictured Jeremy as an eternal bachelor, and I think this is where Thomas gets a little off course on his argument, because like your child was 7. You didn't have time to picture. No one pictures their child as an eternal bachelor, because that is the heteronormative society that we live in, that you expect your child to get married and have a family. But
like, for him, it's still like the 70s and 1980, and like heteronormativity and allonormativity was, well, a lot more normal then.
But also your child was 7. Yeah. And that's just not something anybody pictures for their child, I don't think. But Jeremy could absolutely stand to make a few more friends, especially friends his own age. Like Olivia and Vipin are in their early 20s, and Jeremy's in his 40s. And everyone else is secretly, like, people who are in his age bracket and not accidentally related to him. Because it seems like he was a big fan of Shelley's, but like, they weren't very close, and also secretly his half-sister.
Maybe they could become close now.
Or Anne. Jeremy gets along great with Anne, but she's also in her 70s and secretly almost was his stepmom.
Yeah.
Like, he just doesn't have anybody his own age. Thomas is his closest friend that is his age.
Lonely, awkward professor in a sweater.
I think that Joseph and Jeremy should like rekindle some friendship, because they were rivals, but they were like friendly rivals. I think they should be friends.
Yeah.
Also, they're like in-laws now, so I really hope if we get a 3, Shelley Shelly and Jeremy are like get close. I really want that for the two. Like they both keep talking about how much they like missed out on having a family. I really hope that they band together in this time of like loss and confusion.
They're just like, you know, we were both screwed over.
Anne and Olivia get home, and Anne realizes that they need to look into the voicemail thing, and maybe they can find a way to speak to Alden, or maybe Thomas knows something that he like hasn't thought to tell them. Like maybe it's not so much that he intentionally kept information from him, it's that he didn't know that they needed to know it. Anne's house does the shaking thing again, and they hear the music, and Anne feels like they go like the music is coming from like beyond the liminal, like whatever's on the other side of the liminal, the Fey realm. So that's creepy. I don't like that at all.
That makes sense.
Jeremy and Thomas are at the campsite, and they hear voices, and they go wandering off, and Jeremy thinks he hears the voice of Celeste.
I think I mentioned this in our original episode on Bridgewater, but in, I think, Paraguay, there's I don't know, I'm not really sure what to call him, a figure, I guess, called Jassi Jetere, and he's very much like this. He has lights, he gets people to follow him, he's in the shape of a child, so again, he's like a small person, and he also whistles. So, like, music, lights, getting people to follow you into the wilderness.
Fun.
Yeah, it's just another thing, like, there are so many legends like this all over the world, and it's, again, what this show is looking into.
Episode 18, The Right Medium. Jeremy immediately loses Thomas in the woods, but comes across the legend tripper, and he immediately forgets that he lost his father and agrees to go, quote, trashed, unquote, with this woman who, again, he does not know her first name.
Because she just has that effect on people.
Yeah, but Jeremy and Thomas do find each other, and they're speculating on shapeshifting as a possibility, and Jeremy says he's always found the different iterations of monsters across the cultures interesting, but turns out it's probably just the same monsters seen through the eyes of people that ascribed their own cultural beliefs onto it. And Olivia are super freaked out from the music and the house shaking when they get home. Thomas has no idea that he was showing up. His voice was being left as voicemails on Anne's answering machine, even though she definitely said that at some point. The voices that Jeremy and Thomas heard were kind of like what happened to Ethan. So Thomas is like, maybe we should try and talk to a ghost. Like, maybe we should get a medium or do a seance or something. And Olivia's like, well, we should find out if anybody ever heard Alden. And they reveal that Alden's brother Lee is still alive. He was 5, so he's now in his 80s. Jeremy and Thomas show up to go talk to Alden's brother, and the family just never really talked much about Alden disappearing again, which is really sad because there was 2 other kids involved, and that's really upsetting.
Yeah.
Alden was like the middle child, and so like that's like the middle of their family was just kind of gone.
But also it's very funny that the middle child was the one who went missing and then never talk about her.
But Lee says he has a radio that was Alden's, and he heard Alden's voice through it sometime back in like the 70s. So he lets them have it, which is cool. That was very nice of him to give up this treasured thing of his brother's. Glad he still had that sticking around.
Yeah, you know, great for the plot.
Yeah. Vipin shows up at Anne's. Everyone's still really freaked out, and Anne's like, maybe we should not be in the house anymore. And so they decided they should go stay at Shelley's. And that's when Anne finds out that Shelley knows about Thomas and that they've met, because neither Olivia, Jeremy, or Thomas have bothered to share that information with Anne.
I feel like we missed out on what could have been like the world's most awkward sleepover.
But they are still going to go, and Vipin offers Olivia's couch just in case she needs a place to escape from her family in this really awkward family reunion, and Olivia's like, we should go on a date sometime after the end of the world is over.
We should.
And they're so cute, and I can't believe they haven't been on a date yet.
I can. They've been busy.
They have been busy, but I mean, it feels like they've just been dating this whole time because they keep going out places, but they're always going out places to gather information. Anne still doesn't trust Peyton, but Vipin feels like he does, which makes me feel like we can trust Peyton. Like, again, I'm trusting whoever Vipin trusts and not trusting whoever Vipin doesn't trust.
Vipin has his third eye open.
Vipin's like iPhones. Like, it used to be a thing that, like, if someone had an iPhone, you knew they were the good guy. And if they didn't have an iPhone, like, they could be a bad guy because Apple only licenses to good guys. That was a thing for a while. And that is Vipin for me. Jeremy and Thomas are going to meet them at Shelley's. No one feels good about going in. So Olivia just is like, I live here. I'm just going to walk in and you can all come with me. Shelley's not really thrilled that everyone's just arrived all the time. At the same time, she's not thrilled with the situation at all. And she isn't ready for them to be a family. She's not ready to talk about it. So then we get into episode 19, which is Birch and Pine.
Again, missed out on the world's most awkward sleepover.
Yes, exactly. We do pick up exactly where we left off in the previous episode. Everyone's on thin ice except for Jeremy. Once established that Jeremy did not know. anything about their family because they're having very similar experiences, and Shelley is finding comfort in that, that they were both robbed and lied to.
Okay, you could stay. Like,
yeah.
Our lives both suck.
And this is, I think, compounded by the next information we learn, which is that Nancy and Anne agreed not to tell the kids anything, which is the first time we get Nancy's name. And also, that sucks for Jeremy. That Anne decided not to be involved in his life, but also his mom made that decision with Anne and kept that from him. So now his mom's also a liar.
Yeah, well, maybe after this is over, you can call her up and yell at her.
I would really like, I'm actually really sad that Nancy and Thomas never got to have a reunion either. I'm sure they had unfinished business as well. I'm sure she would have liked to have known what happened to him. Like,
yeah.
Like, yes, he was leaving her, but he was leaving her to go with Anne, and then he full on went missing. And like, I'm sure she's like, he either got murdered or he just like bailed on both families. Like,
well, I think it's fortunate that she was able to move on, but I'm sure she might have appreciated that closure.
Yeah, I just think that there could have been some closure there for her, and I just would have liked to know what she thought of this and like what her relationship with Anne would have been like if they had been co-parenting together all these years. I do think it was kind of shitty that they decided not to co-parent together a little bit more for Jeremy and Shelley's sakes. Olivia decides the best way to cool down this tense family situation is to order a pizza, and I really admire that approach. Jeremy and Vipin have just finished a lecture. They're both stressing more each lecture about how this stuff is all real, but they're in together. And thanks to the paranormal seekers, we know that activity and like sightings are definitely on the upward trend. There's also been reports of aliens and Mothman and werewolves and more, and they theorize a bunch. It's the same day as Vipin had breakfast with Peyton, which means that the last 2 episodes have taken the entire like one singular day. And also Jeremy and Vipin straight up do a night class.
And again, I am so shocked that like Jeremy is the only one having breakdowns.
I know a lot of things go into creating like college and university schedules, but I kind of think this subject matter should get a boost in the consideration rank, because I used to have a class that was like 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And I remember one night we had a guest lecturer that came in to talk to us about human trafficking, and specifically how the town that we were all like living and going to school in was was on the human trafficking corridor. And then I had to get off the bus and walk the rest of the way home in the dark at 9 o'clock at night. And I just imagine Vipin and Jeremy giving this lecture on the Dover Demon, and then all these college kids are dispersing into this town that's famous for supernatural shit, and it's nighttime. Like, maybe should only be allowed to run their classes during the daylight hours. I'm just saying.
Oh, this is kind of in the same vein. Not the same, but like sort of. I remember when the pandemic like first started, and like it was the day in like university when we were starting to get really concerned about it, and like there were rumors of like shutting down classes. I had 2 different lectures on plagues. One was like the bubonic plague, like the Black Death, and the other was the plague of Justinian. And both professors were just like, we didn't plan this, but it's kind of funny that it worked out this way.
It also might not be a night class. It also might be a different day. Like, because we then go to Anne at home waiting for Shelley to come home, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Shelley has left work early so she can start drinking wine at 3 o'clock. It is a different day than it's the day after they arrived at Shelley's, because we did miss that overnight sleepover. She's just feeling very robbed about the whole Thomas situation. Like, she missed the chance to even hear about Thomas and to know Jeremy, and she feels like she missed a piece of Anne that was lost when Anne felt like she couldn't talk about Thomas, and that caused a lot of distance between them in their relationship. And Anne gets very emotional about how hard everything was and how much joy she had in raising Shelley, and how things are weird right now, but like maybe it's still a second chance because the 4 of them are all here at the moment. Olivia and Thomas are hanging out in Olivia's room, and Olivia's very excited to share the internet with Thomas. And Olivia's also working on fixing the radio using a YouTube tutorial, which is so fucking relatable. YouTube tutorials really can be used to solve most problems.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast is pretty much almost exclusively run by YouTube tutorials. Like, I taught myself how to edit this podcast by other people showing me on YouTube.
YouTube should sponsor us. Give us money.
Thomas experiences another like tightness, pain in the chest episode, which I don't like because I immediately think you're gonna have a heart attack or a panic attack.
I think of like my worst asthma symptoms.
Yeah, that too. Vipin and Jeremy are out in the forest carving protection runes from Peyton into the forest, and they have a little chat about Jeremy and Shelley. And Jeremy's also a little miffed that his academic rival is now his brother-in-law.
I thought that was kind of funny.
And the legend trooper shows up, and Vipin Vipin doesn't like her. He doesn't like that she keeps showing up in places and is super knowledgeable, even though she was in this case invited. And she takes a look at the runes that they're going to be carving, and she corrects one of them, and she's like, I have a tattoo of this rune, and maybe that's why I've never actually had that encounter that I've been looking for. She carves one, and instantly a monster appears. It's a thunderbird, and chaos straight up ensues.
And that's very fun.
They break into Anne's house, and that's where the episode ends. And then we get into episode 20, the yokai. We talked about this in the Discord. If you're not in our Discord, I recommend joining it. But we have a Bridgewater channel in the Discord. And last night I was talking about how much listening to this late at night was freaking me out. But I haven't gotten to this episode yet. But both Frances and Meredith were like, yeah, the yokai thing scared me when I was listening. I was listening for it, and I still nearly fell off my bed.
The shriek, it's so loud and sudden.
It came out of nowhere. It was loud.
What the hell is that?
Straight up jump scare. They're in shock that Jeremy is in shock. He does the rune thing that he learned from the Legend Tripper before, and it actually works to get them into Anne's house. Vipin says Peyton was very clear that all of this needs to be kept a secret, so he doesn't want to work with the Legend Tripper, and they're trying to leave, but they can't get out of the house. They're stuck in there. Olivia and Thomas find a station with the music that Olivia and Anne heard in the Fey Realm, and Olivia's like, this is not a real station. It shouldn't be playing anything
yet.
Yeah, at the same time, it is. Jeremy and Vipin have the realization that maybe they're actually inside some sort of liminal space, and the liminal kind of opens and closes like a tide. Vipin accuses the Legend Tripper of doing something with that room that she carved in the tree. He does not trust this woman at all, and this is when I didn't trust her, because I was solely basing this on Vipin.
That's a good idea, as we discover later.
Yeah, this is when I was like, no, I don't like this. But Jeremy tells her straight up everything. He's like, Thomas Bradshaw's my father. He's back from the liminal space. He tells her everything that they know so far. Then we hear the scream of the yokai. It's straight up horrifying. They're under attack again, and Vipin repels it with Pinto Bean.
I'm currently watching Inuyasha, and there's a lot of yokai on that show, and I am now I'm kind of mad that they never throw beans at them.
Can you describe what the yokai looks like in that? Because they say a lot of words, but
so yokai, I don't know, they look like a lot of different things because there are lots of different kinds of yokai. So it depends. Some of them are like foxes, like kitsune. Some of them, are different other kinds of animals.
Yeah.
Some of them look like people. It really depends.
Later in, I think it's either this episode or the next episode, they refer to this as Oni, which is a term I was more familiar with.
As what? Sorry?
Oni?
Oh yeah, I think an Oni is a different kind of thing. It's not a yokai.
No, but
it's huge though.
Yeah.
Oni are enormous and dangerous, and they have horns and big teeth and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think horns were mentioned in this description that they give in the podcast. But I was just curious, because I'm more familiar with the term Oni from Teen Wolf, which takes the more supernatural approach where all the monsters look like people. So you don't get a good sense of what the source material creatures are like.
Yeah, and Inuyasha is an anime, so
yeah, so there's a visual component that this just doesn't have.
Yeah, and they're very focused on sword fighting the creatures.
Olivia, Anne, and Thomas hear Vipin, Jeremy, and the Legend Tripper on the radio, confirming that they are not in the correct dimension at all. I think that's even more scary. Not that they're stuck in the house and they're being attacked by monsters, but that they're listening to a station that they know is coming from another dimension, and they hear Jeremy and Vipin.
And worst of all, they hear Jeremy's wrist getting broken.
Yeah, which is super horrifying. Yeah. Jeremy also gets kind of knocked out in the fight, and he wakes up with a broken wrist. It's all bad. And the Legend Tripper tries to hype Jeremy up about how everything's real, and Vipin's like, I'm just gonna load up on every single thing that we have ever heard of that can repel the supernatural. And he's like, let's turn our clothes inside out, and salt. He does a little salt, obviously, because we needed a salt thing. Jeremy says he had a Wicca face as a teen, and I would like more information about that, please.
I feel like that was his version of an emo face.
Jeremy is a little bit angry, actually, that things are real, because the things that are real suck. He's had 40 years without his dad, and the monster just broke his wrist. And she's like, remember when I was a child, I went somewhere. It wasn't the liminal, it was somewhere amazing. And this is very clearly just her trying to jog Jeremy's memory. And she says, if doing magic felt good and protected you, like how can magic be bad? And I would like to introduce her to Sam Winchester. But she suggests that they should try and change the deal with the Fey realm, and no one will have to go into the liminal, and like people will be able to go as come and go as they wish, but only like certain people, so it would be better than what they have now. And Thomas and Olivia show up, and they can't open the door from the outside either, and they hear the yokai noise, but it's not right in our ears this time, which is better. Like I took notes about how much quieter the second one was, because it was not right in my ear, and I didn't almost fall off my bed.
And we knew it was there this time.
I mean, it still was like not part of the conversation. It was not part of the moment that we were having, but yes, they get in and everyone reunites, and Jeremy is trying to explain what's happening, and also Anne keeps demanding who the legend tripper is, and he is about to introduce her, which I think would have probably been where Jeremy got tripped up about the name thing. But there's a sudden distraction that a hiker has been found dead.
Stupid hikers.
Episode 21 is Changeling, and Jeremy talks to Officer Batista, who, in case you forgot, is Katie Franks' girlfriend. In case you forgot why she's being so nice to them, it's because she's Katie's girlfriend, and Katie and I think her name's Maria have decided that they're just going to help Jeremy with whatever, and like police be damned.
Whatever else is going on, I'm glad that these two seem to have a good relationship.
Yeah, they're
really
strong.
went through some shit lately. But I'm really glad that they like discussed it and came to that decision to help Jeremy. But the body of the hiker was drowned, but they weren't wet or in the lake. Like their clothes weren't even wet. So that's suspicious. And
you know how excited I was when they mentioned Kelpies?
Yeah, Olivia mentions the Kelpie. Vivian and Jeremy have an absolute moment of horror when they realize that the Loch Ness Monster might be real.
Yeah, actually, they didn't make that up for the show. That's an actual like theory about the Loch Ness Monster, that like it might be inspired by legends of Kelpies.
I kind of love that, actually. If there are any supernatural monsters that I would be actually kind of chill with being real, I feel like the Loch Ness Monster. Because like, you just hear people seeing the Loch Ness Monster. Loch Ness Monster's not out here usually eating people for the most part.
No.
Yeah.
Just living in her lake,
Like drowning anybody or like tipping boats over, just chilling and like occasionally being spotted. And like that is the kind of chill monster I would be okay with coinciding with a little bit more.
Yeah, just being in a very cold loch, just minding her own business.
Thomas wants to close the gate now, and Jeremy is like, we could renegotiate the deal, we could get Alden out and get the monsters under control. Vipin straight up calls the idea that Jeremy describes as colonization. No one else is on board with this idea except for Jeremy. And Vipin's like, this is not your idea. This is the Legend Tripper's idea. I don't trust her. And he points out that Jeremy's never gotten her name and asks what he even put her phone number as. And we didn't get an answer, and I would like an answer.
Yeah, me too, honestly. But also, the colonization idea, it's so stupid.
It's not a good idea.
I think Jeremy is very cute for thinking that he could march into the Fey realm and things would go well for them.
It's Jeremy wanting to colonize the Fey realm. It's also Jeremy allowing their realm to be colonized by the Fey.
Yeah, I think the Fey would be like totally into colonizing our realm, but
yeah, it does seem like they kind of want to come over here a lot more than they do.
I really don't think that humans could colonize the Fey realm. I think we would be way over our heads.
We do have a knack for colonizing, but I do feel like that might push our ability.
Like there's like an Irish race of gods that were eventually defeated by humans, and I'm not actually sure how that happened because I haven't studied it, but we think that they were called the Tuatha De Danann, and we think that a lot of legends of fairies might have been inspired by them, and like they eventually became fairies.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they were kind of driven into the other world like by humans, but yeah. Anyway, fun fact.
I do think humans will do a lot to protect their space that they already have, and I do think that we are ambitious about colonizing literally every spare planet and dimension we can find.
Yeah, and with the nature of the Fey realm, I don't think we're matched. We would have an easier time fighting Fey in our world than in theirs.
Oh yeah,
the other world isn't really built for humans.
I think that's fair. Also, I feel like, if the you drop sugar and they have to stop and count it thing works, I feel like they probably just don't have sugar. you know, they've taken precautions against all that shit in their realm.
Yeah.
Anne and Thomas have apparently been having conversations, and they've decided that the two of them are going to go into the liminal. Alden will come out. That buys everybody here 40 years to figure out something else. Jeremy is not going to agree to that because he's not going to let Thomas go, or Anne. He's gotten really fond of Anne. And Thomas is like, I knew ever since I got back that I'm on board for a time. I don't belong here. And Pippin and Olivia nope the fuck out of that conversation. They're like, this is not for us to be involved in. This is between the three of you.
It's probably a good idea.
I would argue that Pippin and Olivia are family and they are entitled to be at any family discussions that are happening, but also they don't need to be here. I agree. They are entitled to leave as well.
Yeah, I feel like they just don't want to be in this conversation.
Thomas says he knows he came out wrong, and Anne and Thomas might actually buy 80 years, and Alden deserves to move beyond the liminal one way or another. So whether he comes out to this side or the other side, it doesn't matter. He just doesn't deserve to be there anymore. Jeremy tries to pull the I'm older than you card on his dad. It doesn't fucking work.
I was waiting for him to do that.
He's super pissed, but he doesn't say fuck nearly enough. So this doesn't even touch it. Episode 9 of season 1 is still my favorite episode because of the speech that Jeremy gave when he found out that Shelley was Thomas's daughter, and Anne and Thomas were fucking. That was it for me. That was like peak performance for me. But I do like when Jeremy's mad.
Yes.
Well, you're getting a lot of it this season.
Jeremy says it's been like a month since he met Anne, which is not the timeline we've been keeping, and I just choose to believe now at this point it's okay. It doesn't work for the Joe Biden thing. It doesn't actually work for the number of days I've counted. It's fine.
Honestly, though, it kind of works for the Fae realm. Time is weird over there.
I do think if there are extra days that I haven't counted, they happened between episode 16 and episode 17, like right before the Bigfoot ate those campers. I just think if there were days missing, like those were where the days would be.
Yeah. Also, I'm not really going to trust Jeremy to give us an accurate timeline at this point.
True.
A month is a ballpark. Jeremy says if Thomas does this, he doesn't know if he'll ever be able to stop being angry, and Anne and Thomas will get to be together and he'll be alone again, and Jeremy and Shelley are starting to sound a lot alike. This is starting to sound exactly like what Shelley was saying about Anne always doing what she wants. Jeremy has a very similar thread.
And the fact that this is what happens makes me so mad.
I know. Jeremy says he grew up without parents, and it's even though he had his mom, and it's not Thomas's job to sacrifice himself. And Thomas says it is my job to sacrifice myself if it's to save you. And Jeremy says they still have time, even though someone's dead. That doesn't mean they have to do something right now. And Thomas is like, there's this still happening. It's happening a lot faster than it happened in 1979, and things are already worse than they were then. But Thomas promises he's not going to do anything just yet because he wouldn't do it without saying goodbye. So Jeremy's not on board, and Jeremy's storming out. So that puts Thomas into a spot. Pippin and Olivia have gone back to the bar. It's really busy, even though it's 8 a.m. on a Wednesday. And the last time they were there was no one there, even though it was evening. So that's weird. That's weird bar behavior. Olivia straight up orders some beers at 8 a.m.
It's like, well, when in Rome.
I did Google Massachusetts liquor laws. Bars can serve 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. Monday to Saturday. In Ontario, it's 9 a.m. And Francis, I believe you're in California.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can serve alcohol at 6 a.m. in California.
Well, yeah, because we do brunches and whatnot. You can have champagne as early as 6 a.m.
I don't think it's brunch if you do it at 6 a.m. I don't think that counts.
No, but I'm saying, like,
that's-
we do serve early.
Yeah.
I think we do brunches, but you can't serve before 9 a.m. And I think if it starts earlier than 9 a.m., it's not a brunch. It's just breakfast.
Yeah, I've never really been terribly into brunch or looking up liquor laws. I've never had the need.
Yeah,
So
you
it's very
don't drink, so
educational.
it's not.
No one and most of the people I know don't really drink either.
I'm not a big drinker, and I'm going to definitely usually never be a breakfast drinker, but like,
Yeah.
brunch does foster a mimosa culture.
That's true.
Where you pour
That's
some
true.
champagne into some orange juice and you have a good time about it.
Yeah, with all your wine mom friends.
We have this restaurant here called El Torito. I don't know if you guys have it in Canada.
It doesn't sound familiar, but I'm Googling.
But they do brunch every Sunday, and for their mimosas, they'll give you a glass of orange juice on the side from your champagne flute. And they fill up the champagne like all the way to the tippy top, so you can put just one drop of orange juice in it. There's your mimosa. It's great.
I think we maybe do have this. I've never heard of it, but no, I don't think we do. I googled it. I googled El Torito, Ontario, but I forgot that there was an Ontario in California.
Yeah.
So that did not help me. I don't think we have it. Anyway, the paranormal seekers are also meeting up at this bar, and it turns out everybody's here because a child has gone missing in Somerset.
Oh no.
A 12-year-old's gone missing, and the tensions are really high. So that's a big escalation, and we don't really find out any information about this 12-year-old again. But people are gathered in this particular Irish pub because it's a hotbed of satanic activity, and one woman is being a bit of a Karen about the punks and the free lovers of the 70s, and her Facebook friends all agree with her.
Good for her.
She's just really rude for no reason. Vippin and Olivia spot Peyton, and Peyton was looking for the legend troopers, but when she sees Vippin, she's thrilled to see Vippin because she was actually kind of looking for him, and she just didn't really know. She's really upset about the rune that the legend trooper carved into the tree because the rune was for breakthrough, as in breakthrough to our world, which is what caused the chaos from yesterday. So Vippin was absolutely right when he made that accusation.
Yes, he was.
Jeremy has stormed out to the woods and has started screaming for a monster fairy, someone to talk to him. He's literally like being a bit of a Karen himself, yelling for a manager.
And he gets one.
He does. He hears Celeste's voice, and it's the Dover demon, and this body is just a vessel. And I'm like, that's gotta be a Castiel reference.
Yes.
Side note, this is like my favorite scene / conversation in the entire series.
With the Dover demon?
Just with him and the legend tripper. Just the entire scene.
Yeah. It goes more into like next season, next episode. But yes, it's very good.
Yeah, I was enthralled for the entire thing. It was really cool, and I loved their dynamic.
Good. Even though at this point we were like, oh, this person's bad news, it was still a good reveal. Because she does appear and reveals that she's from the Fae realm, and she knew Jeremy's name because he gave it to her 4 years ago when she was missing. And she goes by many names, and he can call her Francine. She's the one in charge that he was screaming for, and here to talk. And then she asks if he knows about changelings, and she's here to talk to Jeremy, and she's like, you're special, and I want to help you and offer you a choice. And that episode ends, and we have to go into episode 22, The Deal. Jeremy is trying to be super chill at the moment, and Francine's a little bit annoyed about it. And Francine knows what Thomas wants to do to like go back into the liminal, and they both want to talk about the deal, so it's a good thing they're both here. Francine says Jeremy's energy is very special, and he just kind of like wandered across a puckwudgie, and he showed up in the Fae realm, and he's not supposed to be able to do that, but the veil was being really weird, and he did. And she would have kept Jeremy there. She'd just done this changeling swap with Francine Markham, which is her current vessel, so she was just curious about Jeremy. This is weird. Alden was supposed to be replaced by a changeling, but he got stuck in the liminal as well. So that was some new information about Alden. And it's interesting because I guess that it's weird because I was under the impression that like they just had to get you out of this realm and then they could replace you because Alden's missing, but a Fae never took his place because he didn't make it all the way through.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I guess if he made it all the way through, then he wouldn't have been missing anymore, and he's still missing. But Jeremy heard Thomas calling him, and he just popped himself back out of the veil, and that kind of pissed Francine off, but because she doesn't have any idea why. And now Jeremy's a little bit freaked out, but Francine faked the magic that Jeremy did at Anne's yesterday, so that's great. And Francine basically says like he wouldn't be a folklore professor if there wasn't folklore teach, and he should be grateful for the opportunity. Francine also kind of like indicates that it's also kind of like implied that the girl that Anne found is Francine, so Anne found the changeling of Francine.
Yes. No.
I thought that was a great tie-in. Because that was brought up several times, that Anne was good at finding people. It turns out Anne's just been pulling changelings back. Bringing changelings back to their fans. Jeremy has a little moment where he's like, am I a changeling? And she's like, no, you're you. Francine's like, you would be a folklore professor if there wasn't folklore. You should be grateful for the opportunity. And Jeremy's like, nothing that happened between us was real. It was all a lie, and I don't want to be tricked again. Which is very valid. And Francine's like, we both need a friend. I'm going to give you a chance to save your father, and people can go all the way through the liminal space and pass into the Fae Kingdom and live there forever. They're just not human anymore by the time they get there. No one's ever had a problem like with that when they get there. And people don't need to stay in the liminal. They do need to just be like willing though, and that's part of the reason why they can't find the second door once they get into the liminal. And that makes sense why Thomas and Alden would both be stuck there, because Alden was being taken like as a changeling, and Thomas got like pushed in by accident. So that makes sense that they couldn't find the second door because they weren't willing. She's offering to show him the second door and give Alden back, offering to show him the second door and show Alden the second door, and like count that as the two for this cycle. So they would only have to put one person in this time.
As long as that person was Jeremy.
Yes. Jeremy said he did feel a connection to Francine, but now he feels duped. And then Jeremy says all the things that make me think that he's great.
Or just plain ace.
Just plain ace, honestly. And I definitely agree, like Arroways, like just not.
Yeah, like he's definitely on both of those spectrums.
Yeah. Jeremy then he literally says, "I found you interesting in a way that I don't usually find people interesting," which is very. And then he also says, "There have been people through the years, people who are sweet and not a lot else. They have always wanted more than you wanted to give." And he says, "I guess I'm just picky." I'm like, that's a man who just doesn't know the word asexual.
That's also like a thing that people say to people on like the ace and arrow spectrums. It's like, no, you're just picky.
Yeah. She promises that he'd be able to do magic over in the Fey realm, and she heals his broken wrist. And Jeremy's like, "Well, I'd never see the people I care about again." And she's like, "Those are tenuous relationships at best, and those relationships would be stronger by you sacrificing yourself for them than by you staying here and spending time with them," which is a straight up lie. But
so up until that point, I was thinking like, oh, maybe it would be more interesting if Jeremy went into the Fey realm. But then she said that about his relationships, and I thought, okay, yeah, he's not going. He can't, because just after something that just trivializes these relationships he has, it just wouldn't feel very fair to the audience.
Yeah, exactly. And like that trivialization is like such a manipulation, and just so untrue. Like, but I can see why Jeremy would believe that in the moment.
Throughout this scene, I was wondering like how much she was telling the truth, because they were talking about her lying, and in a lot of Fae stories, they actually can't lie.
Yeah, I can only tell like the truth in like a misleading way.
Yeah, so they've become experts at doing that, and so if you take her words at face value, like I want to go back and analyze everything she says.
It was really interesting.
Yeah,
they kind of went through all the things that Jeremy did know about her and all the things that she had told him, and she like explained why they were true.
Yeah, like Fae lie through manipulation and through illusions, but they don't really say untrue things.
Anne and Thomas are starting to worry about Jeremy, and Anne promises that she's only on board to do the liminal thing if they're both on board. And Thomas is very sure he's not going to survive in this world, so he is kind of on board. But then they talk about it more. They should have stopped there when they were both on board, but they keep talking. Anne says she squandered the gifts in her life that were Thomas and Shelley and Jeremy, and she owes it to her family and to herself to protect them, and she could go without them. Even if Thomas is sick and dying, he could spend that time sick and dying with Jeremy in this realm. And now Thomas has doubts because of Alden, and Anne promises that she'd care for Alden if he decides to stay. They just need to close this and buy some time right now. Pippin comes back with Peyton and the Legend Purple reveal, and now everybody's really concerned, so they all go out to the woods to look for Jeremy. And Peyton is like, as long as Jeremy's willing, if he goes in, I don't care. Which is super relatable. They all agree Jeremy would absolutely do something stupid to protect Thomas.
He is doing something stupid to protect Thomas.
He is absolutely doing something stupid. Anne pulls Olivia aside and makes Olivia promise that she'll tell Shelley what's happening, and that Anne loves Shelley because Anne knows that she's not coming back. She's probably going to the liminal like right now. They find Jeremy and Francine, and Jeremy's going to go through and pass himself and Alden through, but no one else is going to trust Francine. Anne says she'll go, but Francine doesn't want Anne. She just wants Jeremy, and it's all Tom's fault for recalling Jeremy back to this world in the first place. And Vipin's gonna do something stupid, so he starts carving a rune, but Francine knows and breaks his arm, which made everybody upset.
You don't touch Vipin.
It made me upset. I was upset. Also, the sound of his arm breaking was upsetting.
Yeah.
Anne insists that she's going. Jeremy says Alden's not Thomas' son, so Thomas should not be worrying about Alden at all at this point. And Jeremy says this is how he can be the most useful is if he goes. And Anne straight holds Jeremy down. Anne's fucking fit.
Yeah, no, that was the right decision to make.
Thomas Anne hold her down, and Anne just tackles him, which is incredible. Again, Anne is in her 70s.
Also, I'm assuming Jeremy doesn't work out much.
I mean, it seems like he does work out quite a bit. He mentions that he goes to the gym somewhat regularly. He doesn't have anything else really going on.
That's true. I forgot about that.
I don't think he's working out as much as Anne is, apparently, but
no.
I wouldn't say Jeremy's never like worked out before. He's definitely like going to the gym on a somewhat regular basis. Not recently, but Thomas does go through the liminal, and Anne follows, and the liminal closes behind them, leaving Jeremy, Olivia, Vipin, and Peyton behind. Francine's like gone. They've bought themselves some time.
She has like an angry parting message.
Oh yeah, it's not over, which does make me hopeful we might get a third season of this. There are probably still going to be monsters out there. And Jeremy's like, what the fuck just happened? That was definitely not how I really felt about anything. Something happened to me. She definitely did something to me, and I really want to go, but I didn't mean the things that I was saying to get there. And he wishes he had a chance to like tell his dad, and that's really sad that they didn't really get a goodbye. And Alden has been popped out of the liminal, and he's looking for Uncle Tommy. And I really like that it was Uncle Tommy, and like he wasn't calling Thomas dad. I feel like that would have been really upsetting for Jeremy.
Yeah.
I feel like Uncle Tommy is like more respectful and just very, very sweet. Like Jeremy then takes Alden to visit Lee, his brother, and they give Alden's radio to Peyton to take to Virginia. And Alden recognizes Lee the same way that Thomas recognized Jeremy, even though it's been 80 years, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
And the season just kind of ends on that like reveal. There's not a lot of closure. We don't like have Shelley finding out that her parents have both disappeared.
It just makes me really, really hope there's going to be a third season, because if this is it, it's not very satisfying.
Yeah, I would say a little bit more satisfying than the first season.
Well, yeah.
Where like just like Thomas had just gotten back. I do feel like we got a lot of answers to a lot of things. But yeah, Francine yelling, "This isn't over," and then not having any idea what happens to Anne or Thomas.
Okay, so she became like probably my other favorite character after Jeremy, and I'm really, really hoping it isn't over, because I want to spend more time with her. Like, she's not trustworthy, and she is not really a nice person, but I really love her.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled out like a few of my favorite quotes from the season, and I just thought maybe y'all might have some quotes. I know Meredith has no notes, so I'm guessing you don't have any specific quotes that you want to talk about.
Oh, no. Okay, so I was inspired to do some fan art based on, I'm still working on that, but based on the conversation between Francine and Jeremy, and I did pull like a couple quotes from that, but I'll let you go, because I'm not sure how usable these are.
Yeah, I'm really excited. If Meredith's done the fan art by the time that this episode is out, which she should be, because she's much faster at art than I am at editing this podcast and getting through the back half of season 3 with this podcast, I will try and post that on our socials so we can share it with people.
Yay!
My first quote was from episode 12. Thomas goes, "I'm just a man, just a regular man who was trapped in a liminal dimensional space for 40 years.
No, you're not, Thomas.
And then my next two quotes are from episode 13, episode 15, and they're both Jeremy freaking the fuck out. The first one was, "Welcome to the shittier version of the future where we have climate change and no flying cars, and apparently have long-eating monsters. But silver lining, you can carry a computer in your pocket, so it's not all bad." And then he's like, "Oh no, we have to investigate a monster attack, Nibu, because that's what we do now. We're bovine murder detectives." I definitely saw a lot of bovine murder detective art when that episode came out, and I'm a big fan. The episode 15 one was, "It's like seeing a natural disaster on the news, you know? It's terrifying and it's awful and you want to help people affected by it, but there's really nothing you can do, not at the moment, because you can't stop a storm and you can't protect all those people because you're just a single person thousands of miles away, right? But in this situation, the natural disaster is in the next town over, so maybe I do have to worry about the tornado hitting me, except right now my house is also on fire, so it also feels like I should focus on that first. But while all that's going on, I've been handed this winning lottery ticket, you."
You can hear the spiraling.
Yeah.
Jeremy does a lot of spiraling this season.
The season is just his descent into madness.
In episode 17, Thomas says, "When I was your age," and then Jeremy goes, "Dad, you've never been my age. Literally never been my age."
Yeah.
And then in episode 20, I think it was The Legend Ripper, said, "I don't have to be a glass half full person because the glass is magic," which I really liked. My last two quotes are from episode 22, and they're both Anne quotes. The first one is, "Let me give you the family that I've spent my life keeping at a distance." And the other one is, "Maybe we've been given this beautiful family that we need to take care of at different times in different ways." I'm really sad that their family is so broken
Too.
but I'm also really glad that we got to see them back together for a little bit.
Yes, because turns out they are all sorts of chaos together.
I don't remember hearing this on my first listen, but on my second listen in episode 11, the very first episode of the season, you actually do hear Anne and Thomas kiss.
Yep, you do.
Oh yeah, I think I remember that.
Even though they repeated several times that they couldn't be together now, like they're together.
Good for them.
Francis, do you have anything that you want to bring up about this episode, about this season, about this podcast?
I didn't really do any quotes, but I did like grab some references from like Supernatural.
Yes, hit us with your. Actually, Meredith, do you have quotes that you want to talk about first, and then we'll go on to.
Yeah, if you want to do your
Supernatural,
quotes first, yeah.
Oh, just one that I thought was really cool. Again, I pulled pulled this so I could do fan art, but anyway. I really liked it when Francine said, "We're not cruel, Jeremy," and then he laughs like, "We're not, we're particular." There's a difference.
I do like that. That's a good quote. I'm sure it'll be really good with your fan art.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'm using this one for the fan art, but I might do more fan art for this one. We'll see.
Incredible. Whatever fan art exists, I will ask Meredith to have for the social media.
Awesome. I just need everyone to understand like how amazing this is, because I never do fan art.
Yes, I don't. Meredith hasn't done fan art in like literally years. Like back when we first met, when we were in like 8th grade. That's the last time I like actively remember fan art happening.
Fan art was that? And we can have that conversation later.
Anyway, yeah, supernatural references. Francis, hit us. It's what we love. It's why we're here.
It was a lot of the times when I was listening to the podcast and like there would be a supernatural reference, I had to pause and like make a note of it right away, because I'm like, that was specifically a Dean and Sam Winchester thing that Misha and Aaron Mankey and knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like, in the first episode in chapter 11, it was, taking Ethan to his grandparents in Winchester. Like you said before, that was definitely a choice. And when Thomas is talking to Anne for like the first time, where they finally get to like settle, and Thomas is like, "Oh my gosh, you're still beautiful." And I was like, that's from the script. That was the still beautiful, still Dean Winchester.
Oh boy.
The little things that I catch. And then episode 5 or chapter 15, not a lot of demand for paranormal investigators in this world, but however, in Supernatural, spoiler for the later seasons, when we have the other world, Sam and Dean, they get paid to be paranormal investigators. So there is a demand for them.
Hunter Corp 17, my beloved. Still my top choice for who the Winchesters, John and Mary, are the parents of, by the way.
I can see that. And then there was a reference to like Jeremy making a career of being like a paranormal investigator. I don't remember the exact quote because I didn't write it down, but that's also kind of like in my mind a reference to Castiel wanting to like open that B&B and like getting all excited to become a part of the Winchester's gang and wanting to like investigate. And that was when he was sniffing the dead body and like he had a urinary tract infection and whatnot. Very specific.
In this season, we were looking at dead cows instead of dead humans.
Exactly.
Also, like, when you think about it, like, that's really what the Winchesters are. They're paranormal investigators.
They just happen to have weapons.
Yeah, they just finish. They don't just investigate. They also remove.
Also, I would like to add that Trisha Helfer is another Supernatural alumnus. So that's fun.
That is fun. I wonder if that's how she got hired.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
I feel like she's been in a lot of things I've watched. Like she's got range, but also she does creepy, powerful women really well.
She also does sound like a voice. Like when I was picturing Francine, that is basically what I was picturing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think she would make a wonderful Fae Queen.
Yeah, I can do that.
Also, she was so great in Supernatural. Like,
yeah,
we were big fans when we covered her performance back in season 2.
Oh yeah. She had a great episode.
In case you are not immediately and you don't want to Google, she played Molly McNamara in Roadkill.
A woman who did not know she was dead, which kind of fits with the Changeling vibe, honestly.
Honestly,
it really
yeah.
does.
Francis, was there more?
Yeah, I have 4 more of the episodes.
I didn't want to like move on and miss any.
So chapter 16 had the reference to like the Legend Tripper conferences, and that Jeremy had met a whole lot of monster hunters in one place, which we do conventions and whatnot. And then in the Supernatural universe, they had that episode where they went and they saw the convention for themselves, and they do meet a lot of monster hunters in one place in Supernatural. So I thought that was funny that they added that in, which I found like really small things that made no connection at all, and I made them have a connection, which that's how you know I need sleep. And then just the fact that in the yokai episode they mentioned salt.
Yeah,
I put salt with an exclamation point. I'm like, just salt.
They listed off a bunch of things about the like to deter the Fae, but like salt had like its own like moment. Like it was a discussion.
Yeah,
it was not like just mentioned in passing. Like it was absolutely a reference because of the amount of time spent on it.
Yeah,
yes, because salt is important, and especially if you're low sodium freaks, we can't hang.
Overall, how much did we like this episode or this season? season?
I already mentioned I was kind of unsatisfied with the ending, but other than that,
if it's the last season, you're unsatisfied. Are you unsatisfied if there's a third season, or is that like fine? Whatever happens now is.
Well, I'm not unsatisfied if there's a third season, but if there isn't, then I'm very unsatisfied.
Yeah.
But I honestly got more excited about the developments in this season than I did in the first season, because fairies, and I love fairies, and also like creepy Fae Queen, and I like her now, and
I think I had a harder time getting into this season at first. I didn't know how much of the Fae realm was going to be happening, and how much we were going to stick to that, so I wasn't super interested in it the first like 3 mentions. But once it was clear that was the plot that we were going with, I was like, okay, no, I'm on board. I just was worried we were wasting time talking about it and it wasn't going to be the thing that we were actually dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
But I should know better than to distrust the team. I like season a lot. I'm also not super thrilled about the ending. And I don't know if I'll be thrilled even if there is another season. I just don't like that this was solution. I don't know what I would want the solution to be, but honestly, I think at this point, if 2 random strangers got sucked into the liminal space, I think I would have been okay with that. I'm so sick of this family being broken up.
Honestly, there was still like a small part of me that kind of wanted Jeremy to go into the Fae realm.
Me too, kind of.
Yeah, same.
I feel like
I get why it's a bad idea, but I kind of want to see it happen, just to see what happens.
also if we got to follow him there, that would be cool. Even if we didn't get to follow him there, that would be cool. I am a little bit concerned that Anne and Thomas are going to be still stuck in the liminal space, and I don't really want that for them as well. I also didn't really want either of them in there to begin with.
Yeah, and I think it would have been really interesting for Jeremy to go from a skeptic who teaches and studies folklore to part of the folklore.
Yeah. Also, I'm just concerned about Jeremy's book. It seemed like someone was interested in publishing it at one point this season.
Oh, right, I forgot about that.
There was a publisher who was interested in seeing some sample chapters, and I'm also just very concerned for Jeremy's mental health. Like, he is having breakdowns on the regular, and also now his dad is gone again, and Anne, and he's gonna have to tell Shelley, and I'm just not looking forward to that. But yeah, that's what I think.
He's just always
Someone
the
else,
one.
please think things.
Well, he's he's the one who's left behind.
Yeah, and I just want him to have some people not leave him behind. I'm also concerned. Obviously I trust Vipin to be a very good human being. But I am concerned. Vipin is going to graduate at the end of this year.
Oh, and he's going to want to move on with his life,
yeah,
as he should.
I'm a little concerned that Jeremy's not going to have any friends if his best friend /TA moves on with his life. Or I would not blame Olivia if Olivia and Vipin work out. I would not blame them for not wanting to raise their family next to the fucking Bridgewater Triangle.
It's too many bad memories.
It feels a little irresponsible to have a child next to the Bridgewater Triangle at this point. Bring a new child into the situation. I honestly think that Joseph was right to bring Ethan away from the situation.
Yeah.
I can see Vipin and Olivia leaving to go to Virginia to not join Peyton's people, but be near it and study them.
Yeah, me too. That brings us to prediction / wish list for a season 3. Assuming we get a season 3, we don't know at the moment. I'm hoping maybe we'll know later, but we don't really know at this point. But prediction / wish list, something we can look back on when we do know, and see how right / wrong we are.
All right, I want more scenes with Jeremy and Francine. They had a very compelling dynamic, and I want to see more of it, and I want to see it develop.
Yes.
I think this might be a little controversial, but I would be really down for a time jump before the next season.
Interesting. How far?
2 to 5 years.
All right, so give Jeremy some time to collect himself.
Yeah, I want to see the Bridgewater. I'm assuming shit will calm down a little bit in the Triangle in the aftermath.
On my wish list, not exactly a prediction, but a wish list, I would hope that he and Shelley become closer.
Yes, that is absolutely on my wish list. I would like to see 2 to 5 years in the future, Olivia and Vipin hopefully still together, but out of school and starting their own lives together, and Jeremy is Olivia's uncle, and Shelley and Jeremy have gotten close, and Ethan might be back.
Yeah,
Ethan was around a lot in the first season. I'm assuming that they also couldn't get Ethan's actor back for the next season.
Or maybe there just wasn't room.
Yeah, maybe. They just didn't have room to include him in the story.
There was so much going on.
Yeah, yeah, taking your child out of that situation is also like the most responsible parenting choice you can make. So, but I would like to have Ethan back at some point because Ethan's gonna have questions about his grandmother's gone, and he never even got to meet Thomas.
No,
he never even knew that Thomas existed. Probably.
Also, they have to figure out how much of this they're actually gonna tell him.
Yeah, they're gonna have to tell him something because of Anne, but
yeah,
they could theoretically not tell him about Thomas. But in my ideal world where Jeremy and Shelley have become close, they will have to talk about Thomas because that would explain why Jeremy's suddenly their uncle.
Yeah.
And how is Shelley going to explain all this to her husband?
Oh man, Joseph's gonna have a time. I hope, like, that's kind of why I'm hoping for a time jump, so we don't have to. We can just like be like, this is how we explain everything. I assume things are still gonna be a little bit rocky for like the near future in the triangle, so like that will help, I think, with the explanation.
I want at least one basilisk.
Yeah, a basilisk in season 3 would be great, actually.
And I want what's his face, Haddock, to, I don't know, play like a slightly bigger role, because I
really thought he was going to be a villain this season, and he was just not a problem.
I think that would be interesting. I think Will Wheaton has a good villain voice.
Yeah, and also, like, I get that, like, Maria and Katie agreed to help us this season, but, like, last season, a lot of stuff was how to get information around the police, and this season, everyone was just handing out information for free at all times.
Yeah, lots of info dumps. I'm not complaining, but there were a lot of them.
Yeah, no one was like, oh no, can't tell you, can't share information, we're the police.
Yeah, and I guess because, I don't know, things changed so drastically when Thomas came back, and also Peyton wants them to know enough to help her, like, fix this problem. So she's giving out information.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how long, if it's 40 years everywhere at the other spaces, but I would like to know, like, how long Peyton has, because Peyton is gonna have to go into the liminal at some point. I would like to see if we figure out a way to more reliably talk to people. I'm really surprised that Jeremy gave Peyton the radio. I'm assuming Peyton wanted to talk to her dad and see if she could get her dad out of the liminal if he's maybe stuck in there as well. Because theoretically, he should maybe be able to move on to the Fey realm if he knows that that's an option. But I was surprised that Anne and Jeremy went into the liminal and Jeremy gave up the radio that helps them listen to what's happening in there. I feel like he would have wanted to have talked to Anne and Thomas, but I guess he's just hoping that they'll make their way through.
Yeah.
I would like to see Jeremy raising Alden. I assume that's what's going to happen now, because Alden's 7, and neither of them have family.
Yeah, I guess I assumed that his brother would do it, but he's in his 80s.
85.
He's gonna die.
His brother is 85 years old. Like, I kind of assumed that Lee was in a, like, retirement center.
Oh my gosh, that would, like, really bring things kind of full circle. Jeremy starts the series by losing his father and ends it by becoming one.
Yeah, I think I would like to say it would solve a lot of Jeremy's like loneliness issues. I would be a lot more okay with Jeremy having no friends and no family if he like adopted a child.
Yes, give us some of that Mandalorian niceness.
I'd also like to see Vipin being this child's chaotic uncle.
Yes, but like very sweet. And Olivia, however, is the scary, chaotic aunt.
Either Shelley's gonna have to take care of the child or Jeremy is. Like, one of them has to do it. So I would like to see Jeremy.
I think it'd be better if it was Jeremy.
I also just had a thought about Alden that Francine was saying that, usually when the kids go in, a changeling comes out. How do we know if this really is Alden?
I guess we
we'll
also don't know that.
Yeah, so we got to find that out.
Yeah, so season 3, we can find that out. And honestly, if it is a changeling, we could still have fun with that.
Yeah, let's see. Do I have anything else I really specifically want from season 3? I would like them to find a way to get to just confirm that Anne and Thomas have gone into the Fey realm or get them back out of the liminal space.
Yeah.
If they could somehow get Anne and Thomas the same age, be it 70 or 35, I would be really into that as well. One or the other. I would just really like them to be able to live whatever life they have on the same stage.
Yeah.
Honestly, at this point, I feel like aging Thomas up might be the better way to go. It would make their life together shorter, but it would like normalize all of their relationships a lot more.
Also, Anne in a 35-year-old body would make her too powerful.
Yes, it absolutely would. Melissa Ponzio is gorgeous.
That's true. I was thinking like she could hold Jeremy down as like a woman in her 70s, but imagine what she could do if she had a 35-year-old body.
Yeah, I also think it might just put too much strain on her relationships with her like her existing family, like Shelley and Olivia and Ethan, if she's suddenly younger than Shelley.
That would make it weird.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I'd be really interested in a third season at this point. I have very much less specific predictions than I did last season at this point.
Well, yeah, because last season ended with, like, Thomas coming back, and we can have some very definite predictions for that. But if this time everything's kind of up in the air.
I don't know if I would actually like this. As I'm thinking it, I think I actually hate it. But making the time jump a lot bigger and making it like 40 years in the future, so
Actually, I would hate that.
The time is up
I would
again.
hate that.
Where like Jeremy's really old and Pippin and Olivia are like 60.
Well, that's too close to a sequel. Like, I would want something that continues this story.
I was just thinking like Alden would be an adult at that point, and I'd be kind of interested in like adult Alden.
That's true.
But then I started aging up everybody else, and I was like, no, actually, I hate this.
Right, because then we would have too many old mentors, and one of them's gonna have to die. Like,
yeah, I'm not interested in that. I take it back. Misha, Aaron, take notes. Not what we want.
if you're listening, if you're out there somewhere.
But I would like to see the family reunited at some point. I think that I would like to see this series end as a whole with the family somewhat reunited.
I want happiness.
In like a good, sustainable way.
Not too much to ask.
Not in an awkward pizza party. I just found out that my dad existed for the first time kind of way.
Let's go sleep at Shelley's house.
Also, I would really like Ethan and Thomas to have a relationship.
Yeah,
Ethan and Anne were closer than Ethan and Olivia in season 1, so I just think it's a little bit sad that Ethan and Thomas didn't.
Does anyone have anything else to say?
No, we've been recording for like 3 hours.
I think we're good.
Yeah. I hate to rush everyone, but I am very hungry.
Meredith, can you please tell the people where to find you? They want to hear from you about other things.
In the liminal at Shades of Daenerys on Instagram, Tumblr, and sometimes TikTok, but mostly Instagram. And if you'll go there, you'll see lots of really cool drawings for the fantasy series I'm writing, which has a shocking number of similarities to Bridgewater. So if you're into that,
incredible. I'll be showing up in 40 years to get you out of the liminal. I'd like to like make it to a decent age first, and like live a full life, then do the liminal and the eternal life on the other side thing.
Don't, they're my kin.
Francis, where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram and TikTok as letitbelove_93 and on Twitter as Destiel1993, where I post lots of supernatural content, now Smallville, Gotham Knights, whatever your heart's desires.
I don't watch Smallville, so I don't always stay for the whole video, but I do see your videos.
I appreciate that.
Eventually, I should really watch Smallville just for the amount of supernatural crossover, but it hasn't happened yet.
Jensen was really good in Smallville.
Yes,
I liked his
character. I've heard that a lot.
Who did he play?
It wasn't like a huge character, but like Lana had met him in France or whatever country she was studying in, and then brought him back to Smallville, and his family had like ties to Lana's family like way back a couple centuries ago, and like it was this big thing. Like it was good. But he was only in one season, like and then he was gone, and I'm like, okay, well, that was good.
Well, part of me was hoping for an alien, but that's good too.
Next week, we're going to be back to our recaps with a brand new season 4, episode 1, Lazarus Rising. We know everybody's been waiting anxiously for that particular episode.
Go from Misha to Misha.
Yep, got the introduction of Misha officially into the Supernatural Opinions lore.
We have lore.
Canon, I don't know what you want to call it.
No, lore is good.
Lore is good.
Makes me feel happy, like people are interested in our lives.
Yeah, and I believe we're going to be joined by August and Pluto, which is very exciting. Obviously, we always love to have August, and I've been waiting to have Pluto on for a while, so I'm glad that they are able to make it. But yeah, that's next week. Everybody come back so we can have our little like cast reunion introduction.
Nailed it.
Yes.
I've been KJ, and this has been Supernatural Opinions. If you enjoyed our show, the best thing you can do is subscribe on your podcast app of choice and tell a friend. Check out our link tree in the episode description for all of our social media and any other Supernatural-related projects we might be working on. Send us an email. Our address is supernaturalopinionspodcast@gmail.com, or reach out directly at KJ, @EditKJ on all platforms. Thank you to Joe Veretta for our theme song, and our logo was created by Faith Ebert of faithanddesigns.ca. The episode was recorded, edited, and produced by me, editing KJ, KJ. If you want to hear more from me, you can check out my other podcast, Series of Opinions. And last but not least, a huge thank you to all of our guests.
Some things in this world are supernatural. What we need is a savior.